If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your friends and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow.
My name is Elaine Winters. I'm 39 years old, and I've been a park ranger at Mirror Lake State Park for almost 10 years now. Before that, I was an emergency room nurse, but I couldn't take it anymore, seeing so many people die no matter how hard. I tried to save them, so I left and found peace here in the Wisconsin forests. Well, most days I find peace. This morning started like any other June day. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky pink and orange. Mirror Lake was living up to its name, so still that you couldn't tell where the real world ended and the reflection began. As I walked along the shoreline, pine needles crunched softly under my boots. I love these early patrols when it's just me and the wilderness. The loons were calling across the water, their sad, beautiful cries bouncing back from the hills. Normally, these sounds calm me, but today something felt different. Ranger Winters, do you copy? The radio at my hip crackled, but I could only catch pieces of the message from the main station 5 miles away. This is Winters. You're breaking up, I replied, but got only static in return. I looked out at the lake again and noticed something unusual, a thick bank of fog hovering right at the water's edge. It should have been burning off as the sun rose higher, but instead it just sat there like it was waiting for something. The air felt colder than it should for June. I zipped my jacket up higher and kept walking. That's when I spotted a family of deer grazing peacefully near the shore. Beautiful creatures, a mother and 2 fawns. But suddenly their heads jerked up, eyes wide with fear. Something spooked them and they bolted into the trees. I scanned the area, but couldn't see what had scared them. Beautiful morning, isn't it? A cheerful voice called from behind me. I turned to see Travis Morgan jogging to catch up. At 23, he was the newest and youngest ranger on our team, full of energy and questions, lots and lots of questions. "Morning, Travis," I said, nodding. "Ready for today's training?" "Yes, ma'am." He grinned, showing perfect white teeth. "I brought extra trail mix this time." I had to smile. Last time we were out, he'd gotten so hungry he couldn't focus on anything I was teaching him. "Smart move," I said, tapping the side of my head. "Always come prepared." We started down the hiking trail that winds through the oldest part of the forest. Some of these trees haven't been cut in over 100 years. The path was muddy from last week's heavy rains, with a few sections washed out completely. "Watch your step here," I warned Travis, pointing to a particularly bad stretch. The rain did a number on this trail. As we walked, I found myself touching the compass hanging around my neck. It was my father's, the only thing I have left from him. He was a forest firefighter who died doing what he loved, protecting these woods. The compass doesn't just help me find my way, it reminds me of him. "Is that the compass you were telling me about?" Travis asked, noticing my gesture. "Yes. Dad gave it to me when I was about 12. Said as long as I had it, I'd never be truly lost." I tucked it back under my shirt. "Not sure that's always true, but it's nice to believe." Travis smiled respectfully. He knew bits and pieces of my story. Most people in the department did. They knew about the camping trip 10 years ago when a flash flood swept through our campsite. I was the only one who made it out. 4 friends gone, just like that. What they don't know is how the nightmares still wake me up. How I see the water rising, hear my friends screaming, feel the current pulling at my legs, all while I'm safe and dry in my cabin, miles from any river. "What's on the agenda today?" Travis asked, breaking into my thoughts. "Standard patrol. Check the campgrounds, look for any trail damage, make sure no hikers are in trouble." I adjusted my pack, which carried all the usual gear plus my journal. I've been keeping detailed notes on strange things I've seen in the park over the years. Nothing major, just odd animal behaviors, unusual tracks, things that don't quite add up. Some of the other rangers laugh about my careful approach to everything. They call me slow and steady behind my back. I don't mind. Being careful is what's kept me alive. Elaine. Travis's voice sounded strange. What is it? Look at the fog. I turned back toward the lake. The mist that had been sitting at the shoreline was now moving, not spreading out like normal fog, but flowing like water. And it wasn't going downhill like it should. It was flowing uphill toward the forest, toward us. That's not normal, I said quietly, my hand automatically finding my compass again. Travis laughed nervously. Maybe it's just the wind, but there was no wind, not even a breeze. The air was completely still. Let's keep moving, I said, feeling a sense of unease grow in my stomach. We've got a lot of ground to cover today. As we continued down the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling that today wasn't going to be like other days, that this patrol would test everything I'd learned in my 10 years as a ranger, and maybe even the things I'd tried so hard to forget. Travis. And I continued along the muddy trail, stepping carefully around puddles and slick patches. The forest felt different today, too quiet. Usually mornings at Mirror Lake were full of sounds, birds singing, squirrels chattering, leaves rustling. But now, nothing. Even the wind had stopped completely. Is it always this quiet? Travis whispered, as if afraid to break the silence. I shook my head. No, animals know things we don't. When they go quiet, it usually means... I stopped mid-sentence, my eyes catching something in the mud ahead. What is it? Travis asked, following my gaze. I knelt down, careful not to disturb what I was seeing. There, pressed deep into the soft mud, was a footprint, but not any normal footprint I'd ever seen in all my years as a ranger. Look at this, I said, placing my hand next to it for size. The print was nearly 2 feet long with only 3 toes, each ending in what looked like a sharp claw mark. Travis's eyes widened. Is that bear? I shook my head. Bears have 5 toes, and even the biggest grizzly, which we don't have in Wisconsin, wouldn't leave a print this big. Then what made it? His voice had gone up a little. I don't know, I admitted, taking out my phone to snap a picture. No service bars, of course. But let's keep our eyes open. We moved on, but now every snap of a twig or distant sound made us both jump a little. After about 20 minutes, I noticed something else strange. Travis, look at these trees. Several of the pine trunks had deep gouges in their bark. Amber sap oozed out of the wounds like thick honey. The strangest part was how high up the marks went, at least 12 feet off the ground. Could a bear stand on its back legs and do that? Travis asked, touching one of the marks. No bear I've ever seen could reach that high, I said. And the pattern is wrong. These look like claws. Dragging downward? A smell hit us then. Something awful like rotten eggs mixed with old garbage and swamp water. Travis gagged and covered his nose. What is that? He choked out. No idea, I said, though my stomach was turning too. Let's keep moving. Maybe it's just a dead animal nearby. But in my gut, I knew that wasn't it. The smell wasn't coming from one spot. It seemed to be everywhere around us, getting stronger as we got closer to Lake Trail Campground. The campground was supposed to have 3 tents. I'd checked the registration log yesterday. But when we reached the clearing, something was very wrong. Hello, park rangers, I called out, following protocol. No answer. 2 of the tents looked normal. But the third, a blue 4-person dome tent, was torn to shreds. Not crushed like a fallen branch might do, but ripped open from the inside out, like something had burst through it. Lane! Travis's voice shook as he pointed to the ground. There are no footprints leading away from the tent. He was right. Just the usual. Prints around the campsite, then nothing. The sleeping bags were still there, with backpacks inside them. A pot of what looked like last night's dinner sat on the cold fire pit. A cell phone lay on a camp chair, but no people. Try the radio again, I told Travis. He clicked the button. Ranger Morgan to base. Do you copy? We have a situation at Lake Trail Campground. Only static answered back. The hair on my arms stood up, and not from the cold. I pulled out my compass to check which direction we should head next. That's weird, I muttered. What's wrong? Travis moved closer to look. The compass needle was spinning wildly around and around, not pointing north or any direction at all. As I stared at it, I noticed something else. My watch was running backward. The second hand ticked left instead of right. "We need to," Travis began, but froze mid-sentence. He was looking at something behind me, his face going pale. I turned slowly and followed his gaze into the trees. For just a second, I thought I saw a figure standing there, tall and still, watching us. But when I blinked and looked directly at it, there was nothing. "You saw that, right?" Travis whispered. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. "Let's check the rest of the campground quickly, then head back to the station." We split up to cover more ground, staying within sight of each other. That's when I found it. A deer carcass, not on the ground where you'd expect, but hanging from a branch about 15 feet up in a tree. It was half-eaten, with chunks torn out of it. No scavenger birds had touched it yet. Nothing I knew, not bears, not wolves, not mountain lions, kills a deer and puts it up in a tree like that. "Travis," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Time to go." He jogged over, looking relieved that we were leaving. We headed back toward the main trail, the one that would take us to the ranger station. But after 10 minutes of walking, I stopped, confused. "This isn't right," I said, looking around. "We should have hit Pinecone Junction by now." Travis checked his GPS watch. "No signal." "That can't be," I said. "I've walked these trails every day for 10 years. This isn't..." I turned in a circle, realizing with growing horror that I didn't recognize anything around us. The trees were different. The path was different. "Maybe we took a wrong turn," Travis suggested. But we hadn't. I knew we hadn't. A cold feeling settled in my stomach as I realized what was happening. Somehow the trail back to safety had disappeared, and in its place was a forest I'd never seen before, not in all my years at Mirror Lake. "Elaine!" Travis's voice was barely more than a whisper now. "Look!" The strange mist we'd seen earlier was flowing between the trees ahead of us, but now it wasn't just moving, it was reaching out, forming fingers of fog that seemed to stretch toward us when we got closer. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a step back, pulling Travis with me. "We need to find another way around," I said, trying to sound calm for his sake. But inside, every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to run. We backed away from the mist and turned to try another path. That's when we heard it, a sound no human throat could make, echoing through the trees, a howl, but not like any wolf I'd ever heard. This was deeper, louder, and it had something else in it, something almost like words. Travis grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. "What was that?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but we need to move now." My legs wanted to run, but my brain knew better. Running in the forest without knowing where you're going is how people get lost forever. Instead, I gripped Travis's arm and pointed to a small hill about 50 yards away. "Let's get to higher ground," I said. "Maybe we can see the lake or the ranger station from there." We moved as quickly as we could through the underbrush, trying not to make noise. The strange howl didn't come again, but somehow the silence felt worse, like the whole forest was holding its breath, waiting. When we reached the top of the hill, I could see Mirror Lake through a gap in the trees. But the sight made my skin crawl. The mist had spread across the entire surface now, thick and unnaturally. "Still, and at the edge of the water, Elaine," Travis whispered. "What is that?" A shape was rising from the lake. At first, I thought it might be a moose. We get them sometimes, though rarely. But as more of it emerged, I realized it was much, much bigger. Its head alone was massive, with antlers that stretched at least 8 feet across. But they weren't normal antlers. They curved in odd angles with too many points. The creature stood half in the water, half out. In all my years as a ranger, all my time in these woods, I'd never seen anything like it. My whole body tensed up, every alarm bell in my head ringing at once. "Don't move," I breathed, barely making a sound. Don't even breathe loud. The thing's head swung from side to side as if it was searching for something. For us, maybe. Then it stepped fully out of the water and I had to bite my lip to keep from gasping. It wasn't a moose or a deer or anything I could name. Its body didn't make sense. Too tall, too thin, with legs that bent wrong. The mist swirled around it like it was part of the creature, hiding and revealing parts as it moved. "We need to go," I whispered. "Back the way we came, very slowly." We started to retreat, one careful step at a time. We'd made it about 20 feet back down the hill when a twig snapped under Travis's boot. The sound wasn't loud, but in the unnatural silence, it might as well have been a gunshot. The creature's head whipped toward us. I grabbed Travis and pulled him behind a wide oak tree, pressing my back against the trunk. We stood frozen, barely breathing. A minute passed, then another. Slowly, I peered around the edge of the tree. The creature was gone. The spot where it had stood was empty, just mist swirling over the water. "Maybe it didn't hear us," Travis whispered. I was about to answer when something moved in the corner of my eye. I turned to look at the forest to our right, and my heart nearly stopped. Standing between two pine trees, not 30 feet away, was something that made the lake creature seem normal by comparison. It stood upright on two legs like a man, but it was much taller, 8 or 9 feet at least. Its body was covered in dark fur, but its shape was wrong, too muscular, too human. And its head was like a wolf's, but bigger, with a long snout full of teeth that gleamed even in the dim forest light. Its eyes fixed on us, intelligent, aware, and hungry. "Don't move," I breathed, my hand inching toward the service revolver at my hip. I'd never had to use it on anything but target practice. The dogman, I couldn't think of it as anything else, tilted its head, studying us. Then it opened its mouth and howled. The sound hit us like a physical force. It wasn't just loud. It seemed to get inside my head, making it hard to think. In the howl, I heard other sounds. Screaming, tearing, wet sounds that made me want to throw up. Travis clamped his hands over his ears, his face twisted in pain. The howl stopped. The creature dropped to all fours and started moving toward us. Not rushing, but coming steadily, like it knew we couldn't escape. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Travis's arm and pulling him with me. We crashed through the underbrush, no longer caring about noise. I could hear it behind us, not running yet, just loping along, toying with us. I pulled out my gun and, without slowing, fired a warning shot into the air. The bang echoed through the trees, but when I glanced back, the dogman didn't even flinch. It was like the bullet hadn't registered at all. "It's not working," Travis yelled. I looked ahead and saw the trees thinning out. "The old fire road. If we can reach it—" My words cut off as something impossible happened. The ground between us. And the fire road suddenly filled with water. Not a puddle, but flowing water that hadn't been there seconds before. It was like a river had appeared out of nowhere, cutting off our escape. "This way." I veered left, pulling Travis along a deer path I recognized. We ran until my lungs burned, the sound of the creature still behind us, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, like it was playing with us. The growl it made was deep and constant now, a rumbling that seemed to come from everywhere and made my head throb. "Elaine!" Travis's voice was panicked. "I can't—" A sudden splash of water erupted between us, and Travis stumbled backward. In seconds, the splash became a rushing current, separating us. "Travis!" I screamed, reaching for him, but the water kept coming faster and stronger, pushing us apart. "Run!" he yelled back. "I'll circle around. Meet at the boathouse." Then he was gone, lost behind a wall of mist and water that shouldn't exist. I stood frozen for a second before my training kicked in. Travis was right. Standing here wouldn't help either of us. I needed to get to the boathouse, if it was still where it was supposed to be in this twisted version of Mirror Lake. I turned and ran again, this time alone. The forest seemed to shift. Around me, trees moving when I wasn't looking directly at them. Paths appeared and disappeared. Once, I found myself running in a circle, ending up exactly where I'd started, despite moving in a straight line. The growling followed me everywhere, sometimes right behind me, sometimes far away, but never stopping. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. This couldn't be real. There was no such thing as a 9-foot wolfman that could make water appear from nowhere. Yet here I was, running for my life from exactly that. I burst through a stand of trees and saw the wooden structure of the boathouse ahead. Relief flooded through me, something normal, something real. I sprinted toward it, praying Travis had made it there too. I yanked open the door and slammed it behind me, throwing the bolt across. The inside was dark, except for thin rays of light coming through the cracks between boards. "Travis?" I called softly. "Are you here?" A groan answered me from the corner. I rushed over and found him sitting against the wall, his legs stretched. Out in front of him, even in the dim light, I could see the dark stains spreading across his pants. What happened? I knelt beside him, pulling out my first aid kit. It caught me for a second, he said through gritted teeth. Clawed my leg. Before I got away, I cut away the fabric to look at the wound. 3 deep gashes ran from his knee almost to his ankle. They needed stitches, but right now, stopping the bleeding was the priority. "This is going to hurt," I warned him, pouring antiseptic over the wounds. He hissed, but didn't cry out. As I bandaged his leg, the boathouse grew darker. I looked up at the small windows near the ceiling and saw the mist pressing against the glass, blocking out the daylight. Then came a sound that made my blood freeze. Wood splintering. I looked toward the back wall. Long claw marks appeared through the boards, sending shards of wood flying inward. Another rake of claws, and the hole grew bigger. "It found us," Travis whispered, his face pale with pain and fear. I finished tying off the bandage and helped him to his feet. "Can you walk?" "I'll manage," he said, though I could tell every movement hurt him. The claws attacked the wall again, this time breaking through completely. Through the hole, I caught a glimpse of a dark muzzle and gleaming teeth. "The door," I said, supporting Travis as we moved toward the front of the boathouse. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. I yanked the bolt back and we stumbled outside, just as the entire back wall of the boathouse collapsed inward. The dogman's growl rose to a roar of frustration. "The ranger station!" I gasped, taking more of Travis's weight as his injured leg threatened to give out. "We need to get there!" But deep down, I wondered if the ranger station even existed anymore in this nightmare version of Mirror Lake. And if it did, would it offer any protection against something that could tear through walls like they were made of paper? The sound of splintering wood behind us pushed us forward. Travis leaned heavily on me, his face twisted in pain with each step. Blood was already soaking through the bandage on his leg. "I have a plan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As we moved, "The ranger station has weapons, rifles, flares. We can defend ourselves there." Travis nodded weakly. "How far?" "About a mile if the trails are where they're supposed to be." That was a big if. Nothing in these woods seemed right anymore. We stumbled along, Travis getting heavier against my side. The growling behind us had stopped, which somehow felt worse than hearing it. At least when I could hear the dogman, I knew where it was. "Elaine," Travis gasped after we'd gone about a quarter mile. "I need to rest, just for a minute." I helped him sit against a large boulder. His face was pale and sweaty, his breathing too fast. The leg wound was worse than I'd thought. "You won't make it like this," I said, more to myself than to him. "Just leave me the gun," he said. "Go get help." Not happening. I looked around desperately. There had to be a way. I could drag him on a makeshift stretcher, but that would be too slow. I could try to carry him, but my thoughts froze as I saw movement through the trees. The mist was flowing toward us again, and within it, a dark shape moved on all fours. "It's coming," I whispered. Travis tried to stand, but collapsed back with a groan. "Go, please." I shook my head, no. Then an idea hit me. "Wait, the fire tower." What? The old fire watchtower. It's closer than the ranger station. I pointed to a hill visible through the trees. And it's made of metal. Fire towers were built to spot forest fires, tall structures that gave rangers a view over the treetops. This one hadn't been used in years, but it was still standing. A metal frame with stairs leading up to a small room at the top. I don't understand, Travis said. When I fired my gun, the bullet didn't seem to affect it, but at the abandoned campsite, the creature didn't go inside the tents. It tore them open from outside. My mind was racing, and those claw marks on the trees didn't have any metal in them, just wood. You think it can't touch metal? It's worth a try, and the tower gives us height. We can see what's coming. New energy surged through me. I reached down and pulled Travis up. Come on, one more push. We moved as fast as Travis's injury would allow. The mist followed us, always just at the edge of vision. Twice I caught glimpses of the dogman moving through the trees, but it didn't attack. It was herding us, I realized. Like a wolf separating a weak deer from the herd. The base of the hill leading to the fire tower came into view. It wasn't very steep, but with Travis injured, it might as well have been a mountain. We'll rest here for 2 minutes, I said, helping him sit. Then we make the final push. As Travis caught his breath, I reached for my father's compass. To my surprise, it had stopped spinning and now pointed steadily toward the tower. That's weird, I murmured. What? The compass. It's working again, and it's pointing to the tower, not north. Travis gave a weak laugh. Maybe your dad's looking out for us. Maybe. I tucked the compass away and handed him my water bottle. Drink. A low growl rumbled through the trees, closer than before. Our time was up. Let's go, I said, pulling Travis to his feet again. The climb was brutal. Travis could barely put weight on his injured leg, and I was exhausted from supporting him. Every few steps, we had to stop so he could catch his breath. The growling followed us, sometimes right behind, sometimes circling to the sides. The creature was toying with us. After what felt like hours, the base of the tower appeared through the trees. It was an old-style fire lookout, a metal frame about 5 stories tall with a small cabin at the top. The stairs zigzagged up the outside, rusty but still solid. We made it, I breathed, but as we stumbled toward it, a dark shape burst from the trees to our right. The dogman charged straight at us, no longer playing around. Its mouth was open, teeth gleaming, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Go! I shouted, shoving Travis toward the tower. I turned to face the creature, pulling my gun again. I knew bullets wouldn't stop it, but maybe they'd slow it down. I fired 3 shots in quick succession. The bullets seemed to pass right through it like shooting at smoke, but the noise made it hesitate for just a second, long enough for me to back up toward the tower where Travis was already pulling himself up the first flight of stairs. I holstered my gun and jumped onto the metal staircase, grabbing the rail. The dogman recovered and lunged at me, one massive paw swiping at my legs. I yanked them up just in time, feeling air move beneath my boots. The creature snarled in frustration and tried to follow, putting one paw on the first metal step. The reaction was immediate. It jerked back as if burned, a high-pitched whine escaping its throat. It tried again with the same result. "It works!" I gasped. "It can't touch the metal." Travis was already halfway up the second flight of stairs. I climbed after him, my legs shaking with exhaustion and relief. Below us, the dogman circled the base of the tower, snarling and snapping, occasionally trying to reach us, but always pulling back when it touched the metal frame. We reached the cabin at the top, a small square room with windows on all sides. The door was locked, but I still had the universal key that opened every building in the park. My hands shook so badly I could barely get it in the lock. When the door finally swung open, we collapsed inside. I kicked the door shut and helped Travis to a bench along one wall. Then I sat on the floor, my legs too weak to hold me anymore. "We made it," Travis said, his voice thin with pain. "Now what?" "Now we wait for help," I said, pulling out my radio. "Again, someone will notice we're missing. but a glance at the radio told me it was hopeless. The display was dead, the batteries drained. My phone was the same, no power, no signal. We were on our own. I looked out the windows. The mist had surrounded the base of the tower, thick and unnatural. Within it, I could see the dogman still circling, its eyes fixed on us, waiting. "It knows we have to come down eventually," I said quietly. Travis followed my gaze. "How long? Can we stay up here?" I checked my pack. 1 water bottle, some trail mix, a few power bars. A day, maybe 2. Will that be long enough? I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. If the radio wasn't working, no one would look for us until tomorrow. At the earliest, night was falling now, the forest growing darker by the minute. Soon, we'd only be able to see what the moon revealed, and the creature below us would have the advantage. I rummaged through the emergency supplies stored in the tower. There wasn't much. A first aid kit, some blankets, a flashlight with dyeing, batteries. But in a metal box marked "Emergency," I found what I was hoping for. "Flares," I said, holding up the red tubes. 6 of them. "How does that help us?" Travis asked. "I'm not sure yet." I set them on the table and continued searching. In a drawer, I found an old logbook, and tucked beside it a small metal flask. I opened it and sniffed. Whiskey, some long-ago Ranger's secret stash. "Here," I said, handing it to Travis. "It'll help with the pain." He took a small sip and handed it back. I took a swig myself, feeling the liquid burn down my throat. Outside, the dogman howled again. That terrible sound that made my head hurt and filled my mind with images of death. But up here, surrounded by metal, it wasn't as bad. We could stand it. I looked at the flares again, an idea forming. The creature could make water appear, could move through the mist like it was part of it. But one thing about it seemed solid. "Enough! It's fur!" "I have a plan," I said finally. "But we need to wait for morning." "Why?" Travis asked. "Because," I said, staring down at the circling shape below, "we need to see where we're going when we make our run." I didn't think either of us would sleep, but exhaustion won out. I woke with a start as first light filtered through the windows of the tower. Travis was still asleep on the bench, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. I checked his bandage. The bleeding had slowed, but the skin around the wounds looked red and angry. Infection was starting. He needed a doctor, and soon. "Travis," I said gently, shaking his shoulder, "wake up." His eyes fluttered open. "Morning already?" "Yeah. How are you feeling?" "Like I got mauled by a monster wolf." He tried to smile, but I could see the pain in his eyes. I handed him the water bottle and one of the power bars. "Eat something. We need to move soon." While he ate, I looked out the windows. The mist was still there, curling around the base of the tower like a living thing. But I couldn't see the dogman anywhere. "Is it gone?" Travis asked, joining me at the window. "I don't think so. Just hiding." I pointed to the east. "But look, you can see the ranger station." Through a gap in the trees about half a mile away, the roof of the ranger station was visible. It looked normal, untouched by whatever madness had taken over the rest of Mirror Lake. "So what's the plan?" Travis asked. I held up the flares. "These burn hot enough to scare most animals. If the dogman has any animal instincts at all, it should fear fire. And if it doesn't, then we find out if it bleeds." I tapped one of the flares. "These burn at over 1,000 degrees. That should hurt even a monster." Travis nodded slowly. "So, we make a run for the ranger station?" "You won't be running anywhere on that leg," I said. "I'll help you. The main thing is to stay on the metal stairs as long as possible." I laid out the rest of the plan. We'd use one flare at the top of the tower to see if the creature reacted to it. Then we'd make our way down, me supporting Travis, using the flares to keep the dogman at bay if it appeared. We'll head straight for the ranger station, I said. It's built on a concrete foundation with metal support beams. If the creature really can't touch metal, we should be safe there. Travis looked doubtful. And if we get separated again? I took off my father's compass and handed it to him. It pointed us to the tower yesterday when everything else was going crazy. Maybe it'll point you to safety too. I can't take this, he protested. It was your dad's, which is why I know it works, I said, closing his fingers around it, just in case. I helped Travis to his feet, letting him test his weight on the injured leg. He winced, but managed to stand. Ready? I asked. He nodded. As I'll ever be. I opened the flare box and handed him two, keeping the rest in my pack. Then I opened the tower door and we stepped onto the metal landing at the top of the stairs. The morning air was cool on my face, the mist below us moving in strange patterns. I struck the first flare, the bright red light flaring to life with a hiss. Holding it out over the railing, I watched for any reaction from below. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low growl rumbled through the mist and I saw movement, the dark shape of the dogman circling the tower, staying just at the edge of the flare's light. It doesn't like it, Travis said, but it's not running away. Good enough. Let's go. I helped Travis start down the metal stairs, the flare held out in front of us like a shield. The creature kept its distance, but followed our progress, moving. Between the trees, sometimes disappearing into the mist, only to reappear closer than before. We made it down 3 flights of stairs without incident. Just 2 more to go before we'd reach the ground. My arm ached from supporting Travis's weight, and I could tell each step was agony for him. Almost there, I encouraged him. Just keep moving. That's when the first flare started to sputter. The bright red light dimmed, then flared again. It's dying, Travis said, his voice tight with fear. We've got more. I reached into my pack for a fresh one. In that moment of distraction, the dogman made its move. It lunged from the trees, not at us, but at one of the metal support beams of the tower. Its massive body slammed into the structure, making the entire tower shake. Travis lost his balance and fell against the railing. I grabbed his jacket just as the railing gave way, the rusty bolts popping free from the frame. "Hold on," I shouted, clutching his arm with both hands. The flare fell from my grip, bouncing down the stairs and landing on the ground below. In its red glow, I saw the dogman circling, looking up at us, its eyes reflecting the light like burning coals. With all my strength, I pulled Travis back onto the stairs. We clung to each other, both shaking. "New plan," I gasped. "We move faster." I lit another flare and we pushed on, moving as quickly as Travis's injury would allow. The dogman kept pace below us, occasionally ramming the support beams to make the tower shake. When we reached the final flight of stairs, just 15 feet above the ground, I paused. The creature was waiting at the bottom, blocking our path to the ranger station. "What now?" Travis asked. I looked at the flares in my hand. "We make a distraction." I lit 2 more flares and tossed one to the left of the tower, one to the right. The dogman's head swiveled to follow them, momentarily confused by the multiple sources of light. "Now," I said, lighting our last flare and helping Travis down the final steps. We hit the ground running, or in Travis's case, hobbling as fast as he could. I half carried him, my arm around his waist, the flare held out in my other hand. A howl of rage told me the dogman had spotted us. I didn't look back, focusing only on the path ahead, on the ranger station visible through the trees. 50 yards, 40, 30. The sound of heavy paws on the ground behind us grew louder. The creature was gaining. "Almost there," I panted, "just a little further. 20 yards, 10. The wooden steps of the ranger station porch were just ahead when I felt hot breath on my neck. I shoved Travis forward with all my strength. "Go!" I screamed, spinning around and thrusting the flare directly at the dogman's face. It reared back with a shriek of pain, paws batting at its muzzle where the flare had made contact. The fur around its snout smoldered, giving off a terrible smell. I backpedaled toward the porch, keeping the flare between me and the creature. Travis had made it to the door and was fumbling with the handle. "It's locked!" he shouted. "Use my key!" "Front pocket." He reached into my jacket and pulled out the key ring. The dogman recovered and charged again, this time circling to come at me from the side. I heard the door of the ranger station creak open. "Elaine! Now!" I turned and lunged for the porch, feeling claws rake down my back as the dogman swiped at me. Pain exploded between my shoulder blades, but adrenaline kept me moving. I scrambled up the steps and through the door as Travis slammed it shut behind me. "The windows!" I gasped, feeling warm blood soaking the back of my shirt. We moved through, the station securing doors and windows. Outside, the dogman howled in frustration, circling the building, occasionally throwing itself against the walls. "The radio," Travis said, pointing to the main desk. I staggered over and grabbed the microphone. "This is Ranger Winters at Mirror. Lake Station, emergency. I repeat, emergency. We need immediate assistance." To my relief, a voice crackled back. "This is dispatch. What's your situation, Ranger Winters?" I looked at Travis, wondering what to say. Who would believe us? "We have an injured ranger," I said finally. "Possible animal attack. We need medical evacuation and armed backup." "Copy that. Help is on the way. ETA 20 minutes. I sagged against the desk, the pain in my back finally registering fully. Travis found the first aid kit and helped me out of my jacket. "How bad is it?" I asked. 3 deep cuts," he said, "but they don't look life-threatening." He cleaned and bandaged my wounds as best he could, and I did the same for his leg. Then we sat in silence, listening to the dogman's movements outside. "Do you think anyone will believe us?" Travis asked quietly. I shook my head. "I don't know. I'm not sure I believe it myself." The minutes crawled by. Outside, the howling stopped, and an eerie silence fell over the station. I wondered if the creature had given up, or if it was waiting for nightfall to try again. Then we heard a new sound, helicopter blades chopping through the air. Help was coming. "Listen," I said, gripping Travis's hand. "When they get here, we stick to the facts. We were attacked. We don't know by what. Let them draw their own conclusions." He nodded. "Agreed." The sound of the helicopter grew louder, and I saw it appear over the treetops through the window. As it began to descend in the clearing beside the station, I caught movement at the edge of the forest. The mist was retreating, flowing back toward the lake, like water running downhill. And within it, the dark shape of the dogman watched the helicopter, then turned and loped away into the trees. "It's leaving," Travis said, relief in his voice. "For now," I replied. "That was 3 years ago. The official report called it a bear attack, though no one could explain the strange tracks or the claw marks too high on the trees. Travis lost his leg below the knee due to infection, but he's still a ranger, handling the educational programs at the visitor center. I still have the scars down my back. They never fully healed, just like the nightmares never fully stopped. But I didn't quit. Mirror Lake is my home, my responsibility. We made some changes, though. The park is closed from dusk till dawn now. No exceptions. No overnight camping. I made sure of that. And I still carry my father's compass, which Travis returned to me in the hospital, sometimes on early morning patrols when the mist rises from the lake. I think I see movement at the water's edge, something large watching me from the trees. But it never comes close, and it never shows itself in daylight. The locals have new stories now, tales about howls in the night that cause terrible dreams. Most people laugh them off as campfire stories. I don't laugh, though. I know what's out, there in the mist, and I know that someday it might return, but until then I'll be here, watching, ready. Because whatever that thing was, Dogman, Wendigo, or something else with no name, it's part of Mirror Lake now, and so am I. My name is Malcolm Reed. I'm 47 years old, and these woods have been in my blood since before I was born. My Ojibwe ancestors walked these paths for hundreds of years before me. After my time as a Green Beret in the Army, I came back home to work as a ranger at Itasca State Park in Minnesota. Something about these ancient white pines called me back. Today feels different somehow. The trees tower over me, reaching more than 100 feet into the sky. Their thick branches block out most of the sunlight, making it feel like it's almost dusk, even in the middle of the day. I call it the pine twilight. The wind is moving through the needles overhead, making that special whispering sound that sometimes feels like the trees are talking to each other. I've always found it peaceful, but today it sends a small chill down my back. I'm on my last patrol of the day. My cabin sits way up at the north end of the park, about 7 miles from the main entrance. I like the quiet up there, no neighbors except for the animals and trees. As I walk the familiar path, I notice a pair of ravens watching me from a branch. They seem interested in me, too interested. Their black eyes follow my every move before they suddenly fly off. Strange, the sun is setting now and it's getting cold fast. Too cold for mid-September. I can already see frost forming on some of the leaves, which isn't normal. Long shadows stretch across the ground toward me. In the fading light, they almost look like fingers trying to grab at my boots. The hiking trail crosses through some boggy areas where the ground doesn't feel solid. It shifts under my weight like it might swallow me up if I stand in one place too long. I need to be careful here. I can't shake this weird feeling that I'm being watched. Not by the visitors who come to see the park. There's nobody else out. Here this late. No, it feels like the trees themselves are watching me. Their bark looks like wrinkled faces in the dying light. I shake my head. I'm being silly. I touch the small medicine pouch I wear around my neck. It was my grandfather's. Inside are sacred herbs and a tiny wooden figure he carved long ago. It makes me feel safer somehow. My niece Lily is staying with me this week. She's 17 and wanted to learn more about our heritage. That's why I need to hurry back. She's waiting at the cabin. I promised to teach her some of our traditional stories tonight. I'm the last one in our family who knows them all, and our language too. It feels like a heavy responsibility sometimes. Lately, I've been having those dreams again. The ones where I'm lost in these woods as a little boy. They've been coming almost every night now, which hasn't happened since I was young. In the dreams, I'm running from something I can't see, and the trees won't let me find my way out. I always wake up before I see what's chasing me, but I can feel its breath on my neck. My hand automatically goes to my hunting knife. Old habits from my military days. Along with my flashlight and small emergency pack, it's all I carry on these routine patrols. Usually, it's more than enough. But today feels different. The path ahead curves around a large rock face with ancient pictographs drawn by my people centuries ago. I've passed it 1,000 times, but something makes me stop and look closer. My breath catches in my throat. The red, ochre drawings seem to be weeping. A red substance that looks like sap is slowly dripping from the images. I reach out and touch it. It's sticky and fresh. This wasn't here this morning. A knot forms in my stomach as I pull my hand away. That's when I notice the silence. The birds have stopped singing. The insects have gone quiet. Even the wind has died down. The forest has never been this silent before. It's like everything is holding its breath, waiting. And that smell, like wet ashes and old, deep earth, like something buried long ago has been dug up. I need to get back to the cabin, to Lily. Something isn't right in my forest today. As I turn to hurry home, I notice a perfect circle of white mushrooms that definitely wasn't there yesterday. It's huge, maybe 50 feet across, with the fungi forming an unbroken ring. In the center of the circle, the pine needles are arranged in a pattern that almost looks intentional. I've spent my life in these woods. I know every trail, every rock, every bend in the path, but suddenly nothing looks familiar. The way back to my cabin seems different. The trees look taller, older, their trunks twisted in ways I don't remember. My flashlight flickers, then goes dead. I changed the batteries this morning. It shouldn't be doing this. I pull out my matches to make a temporary torch, but the flame dies as soon as it catches, like the air itself is fighting against it. The sun has set completely now. Darkness fills the spaces between the trees, and in that darkness I swear I can hear something moving, something big, something that doesn't belong in these woods. Or maybe it's been here all along, and I'm the one who doesn't belong. I quicken my pace. Lily is waiting, and night has come to the sentinel pines. I hurry along the path as best I can in the growing darkness. The cabin isn't far now. I can see the warm yellow glow of the windows through the trees. Lily must have turned on the lights when the sun started to set. "Uncle Malcolm!" Lily calls from the porch as I emerge from the tree line. The relief in her voice tells me she's been worried. "You're late. I was about to come looking for you." "Sorry," I say, climbing the wooden steps. "Lost track of time." But that's not true. I know exactly how long I've been out there. Something made the walk back take longer than it should have. Lily is tall and slim, with the same dark eyes as her mother, my sister who passed away 3 years ago. Since then, I've tried to be there for Lily whenever she needs me. This week, at the cabin, is special. Her first real chance to connect with the heritage her mother didn't have time to share with her. "You look like you saw a ghost," she says, studying my face. I force a smile. "Just tired, let's get inside." The cabin is small but solid. One main room with a fireplace, a tiny kitchen, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Simple but comfortable. The walls are lined with books about local plants, animals, and Ojibwe history. My grandfather's hand-carved masks hang on one wall, their wooden eyes watching over us. I wash the sticky red substance from my hands before Lily can see it. As the water runs over my skin, it changes color, not diluting like paint would, but swirling with strange patterns before finally washing away. "So what did you do today?" I ask, trying to sound normal as I put on coffee. Lily sits at the small wooden table, her cell phone useless out here with no signal. "Explored around the cabin a bit. Took some pictures of plants for my biology project." She pauses. "Uncle Malcolm, have you noticed anything weird about the trees near the clearing?" My hand freezes on the coffee pot. "Weird how?" "The bark," she says slowly. "It has these patterns that look like faces. I thought it was just my imagination at first, but they seem to change when you're not looking directly at them." The coffee pot clatters loudly as I set it down too hard. "You've seen them too, haven't you?" she asks quietly. I sit across from her, weighing how much to say. Lily isn't a child anymore, but I don't want to scare her. Then again, fear might keep her alert, keep her safe. "The forest is changing," I admit finally. "I've never seen it like this before. The weird mushroom circle, the pictographs weeping. Something's happening." Lily listens intently as I describe what I saw on my patrol. When I mention the silence in the forest, she nods. I noticed that too. Around sunset, everything went quiet all at once. And it got so cold. Outside, the wind picks up, whistling around the corners of the cabin. Tree branches scrape against the roof like fingernails. I get up and add more wood to the fire. "Do you think we should leave?" Lily asks. It's a good question. Maybe the smart thing would be to pack up and drive out tonight. But the service road is tricky in the dark, with steep drops on one side. And something tells me whatever's happening in these woods isn't going to let us go easily. We'll head out first thing in the morning, I decide. Tonight we stay put, keep the fire going and stick together. Lily nods, but I can tell she's scared. I am too, though I try not to show it. After a simple dinner of canned soup and crackers, I bring out my grandfather's old journal. It's leather. Cover is cracked and worn, the pages yellow with age. This might help us understand what's happening, I tell Lily as I carefully open it. My grandfather documented everything about these woods, not just as a naturalist, but as an Ojibwe elder who believed in the spirits of this place. As we read through his neat handwriting, I translate the Ojibwe words for Lily. Many of the entries are ordinary observations about weather patterns or plant growth, but then we find something that makes my blood run cold. During the blood moon of 1943, I read aloud, the Wendigo awakened briefly. 2 loggers disappeared. The elders performed the binding ritual at the stone circle. The entity returned to sleep, but I fear it was only temporarily banished. Wendigo? Lily asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Isn't that just an old story? To scare kids? I wish I could tell her yes, but my grandfather didn't write down just stories. And the blood moon, a full moon with a reddish appearance, started last night. The Wendigo is part of our traditions, I explained carefully. A malevolent spirit that represents winter, famine, and the dangerous side of nature. Some stories say it was once human, but was transformed by dark magic or by committing terrible acts. I don't tell her the rest. How the Wendigo is said to possess people, driving them to madness and cannibalism. How its hunger is never satisfied. How it hunts during the coldest, darkest nights. Before I can decide what else to share, a loud crash comes from outside. We both jump. Stay here, I say, grabbing my flashlight and knife. No way, Lily says, standing up. We stick together, remember? She's... Right. I nod and hand her a heavy flashlight of her own. We step onto the porch together. The night is pitch black except for a sliver of moonlight breaking through the clouds. My flashlight beam seems weak against the wall of darkness. The crash came from the small shed where I keep tools and equipment. Its door is now hanging open, swinging in the wind. As we approach cautiously, I see that the padlock has been broken. Not cut, but broken like someone twisted it until the metal gave way. Inside the shed, our flashlights reveal chaos. Tools scattered everywhere, supply boxes emptied onto the floor, but it doesn't look like normal vandalism or theft. It looks like something was searching for something specific. Uncle? Lily's voice shakes as she points her beam toward the back wall. There, scratched deep into the wooden wall, are symbols I recognize from my grandfather's journal. Ojibwe protection symbols, but carved backward, their meaning reversed. And below, them in English, it wakes beneath the trees. The scratches look fresh, the exposed wood still light in color, and they're too high up, nearly 8 feet off the ground. Much higher than a person could reach without a ladder. A twig snaps in, the forest behind us. We both turn, our flashlight beams cutting through the darkness between the trees. For a moment, I think I see a tall, thin shape moving between 2 distant pines. Then it's gone. Inside, I whisper to Lily. Now. We hurry back to the cabin, lock the door and close all the shutters. I build the fire up as high as I dare. Neither of us mentions what we might have seen in the woods. What do we do? Lily asks, hugging herself. I carefully take off my medicine pouch and open it on the table. Inside are the sacred herbs, tobacco, sage, sweetgrass, and cedar, along with the small wooden figure my grandfather carved. It's roughly humanoid, but with antlers, representing the forest spirit that my grandfather said protected our family. We prepare, I tell her, and we wait for morning. But as the wind howls outside and shadows dance on the cabin walls, I wonder if morning will come at all. Neither of us sleeps much that night. We take turns watching the fire, making sure it never dies down. The wind outside gets stronger, making the whole cabin creak. It sounds angry. Morning finally comes, but it's not the bright, clear morning I hoped for. The sky is dark grey, and a thick fog has settled among the trees. I can barely see 20 feet past the porch. So much for leaving first thing, I mutter, staring out the window. The fog is strange. It doesn't move right. Normal fog drifts with the wind, but this seems to flow on its own, almost like it's alive. Maybe it'll clear up soon. Lily says, but I can tell she doesn't believe it. We eat a quiet breakfast of oatmeal and coffee. I try to call the main ranger station on my radio, but all I get is static. This doesn't surprise me. The radio has been spotty lately. Another thing that's been off about this place. We need to check something, I tell Lily after we clean up. There's a research station about a mile from here. Dr. Emerson was studying the old-growth pines. He might know something about what's happening. Lily looks nervous about going outside, but she nods. Together, right? Always, I promise. We dress. In our warmest clothes, even though it's September. The unnatural cold from yesterday hasn't gone away. I pack my emergency bag with extra supplies, water, energy bars, matches, a compass, and a first aid kit. I strap my hunting knife to my belt and give Lily a smaller one for protection. Stay close to me, I say as we step outside into the fog. If we get separated, use your compass to head east. That will take you to the main road eventually. The forest feels wrong today. The ground squelches under our boots, much wetter than it should be. The fog curls around our legs like fingers trying to hold us in place, and that silence is still there. No birds, no squirrels, nothing. We follow the narrow trail that leads to Dr. Emerson's research station. Normally it's an easy walk, but today the path seems to shift. Twice I find us walking in circles, despite following what I thought was a straight line. The compass isn't working right, Lily says after a while, showing me the needle spinning. Wildly, my stomach tightens. We'll have to navigate by landmarks, but even the landmarks seem different. The huge lightning-struck pine that should mark the halfway point is nowhere to be seen. Instead, we come across a fallen tree I've never noticed before. Its roots are pulled from the ground, creating a wall of dirt and tangled wood higher than my head. Uncle Malcolm, Lily whispers, pointing. Among the roots of the fallen tree is a tangle of bones. Animal bones mostly, deer, raccoon, maybe wolf, all clean and white. But mixed in are things that look disturbingly like human bones. A femur, part of a skull. Don't touch anything, I tell her, my voice tense. That's when I see it. The first clear sign of what we're dealing with. Growing from the center of the bone pile is a single white mushroom, larger than any I've seen before. Its cap is spotted red, and it pulses slightly, like it has a heartbeat. We need to find Dr. Emerson, I say, pulling Lily away from the grisly scene. After another 20 minutes of difficult hiking, we finally reach the research station. It's a small prefab building with scientific equipment set up around it. Solar panels on the roof power the computers and instruments inside. The door stands open, banging gently in the wind. Dr. Emerson? I call out, but there's no answer. We approach carefully. The research station looks like it was abandoned in a hurry. A half-drunk cup of coffee sits on the desk, now cold and growing mold much faster than it should. Papers are scattered everywhere. One of the windows is broken. From the inside, glass fragments litter the ground outside. Look at this, Lily says, picking up a notebook from the desk. It's Dr. Emerson's research journal. The early entries are normal scientific observations about tree growth rates and soil samples. But the later entries become increasingly disturbing. Day 47, I read aloud. The trees are moving, not growing, moving. I've measured it. Tree number 137 has shifted position by 3.2 meters since yesterday. This is impossible. I flip forward a few pages. Day 52, there are eyes in the bark. They watch me when I'm not looking. The samples I collected are changing in the lab. The wood is transforming. I need to document this, but who would believe me? The final entry makes my blood run cold. Day 55, it's in the roots. The entire forest is connected underground, not separate trees, one organism, and it's waking up. God help us. The walking trees are coming. They follow me now. I have to get out. If you read this, run. The last words are scrawled frantically across the page, the pen digging deep into the paper. Uncle Malcolm, Lily says, her voice shaking. She's looking out the broken window. I join her and feel my heart skip a beat. In the clearing around the research station are perfectly circular patterns of mushrooms, 5 of them, forming a pentagram, with the building at the center. They weren't there when we arrived. We're leaving, I decide, grabbing the journal and stuffing it into my pack. Now! As we step outside, the fog has thickened even more. I can barely see the edge of the clearing, but I can hear something, a wet, cracking sound like branches breaking underwater. I take Lily's hand and we head back toward the trail. But we've only gone a few steps when we find our path blocked by what looks like a dead wolf. It's lying, on its side, perfectly still. There's something wrong with it, though. Its fur has been parted in a surgical line down its belly, and its insides are empty. No blood anywhere. It looks like something reached inside and scooped everything out, leaving just the skin and bones. Don't touch it, I warn as Lily steps. Closer. I wasn't going to, she whispers, but look at its eyes. The wolf's eyes are open and they're not animal eyes anymore. They look like hardened amber, the same color as tree sap. A twig snaps loudly in the fog behind us. We spin around but see nothing, then another snap, this time to our left, and another to our right. We're surrounded. The trail, I say quietly, nudging Lily toward where the path should be. But when we reach it, the trail is gone. Trees stand, where the open path was just minutes ago. Trees, I swear, weren't there before. Uncle Malcolm, Lily's grip on my hand tightens. The trees, look at them. I follow her gaze and feel my heart pound harder. The bark on the nearest pines is shifting, the natural patterns realigning themselves to form what look unmistakably like faces. Crude wooden faces with hollow knots for eyes and split bark for mouths, and they're all facing us. Walk slowly, I tell Lily, trying to keep my voice calm. We'll head east as best we can. We begin to move through the fog-filled forest, staying close together. The faces in the trees seem to follow our movement, the knot eyes turning as we pass. I keep expecting them to speak, to reach out, but they remain still. For now. That's when I notice something else. The ground is moving, not an earthquake. It's subtle, like the forest floor is breathing, rising and falling gently. The roots beneath us are shifting. The fog starts to change too. It rises from the ground, flowing upward against gravity to form columns between the trees. The columns twist and bend, looking more like figures the longer I stare at them. Don't look at the fog, I tell Lily. Keep your eyes on the ground. A sudden noise makes us both jump, the harsh caw of a raven. I look up to see dozens of them perched in the trees around us, their black eyes watching. They weren't there a moment ago. Ravens are messengers in our traditions, I explain to Lily, trying to stay calm. Sometimes they warn of danger. I think we already know we're in danger, she replies. The ravens caw again, all at once, the sound echoing through the silent forest. Then, as one, they take flight, swirling around us once before flying east. Follow them, I decide. It goes. Against everything I know about wilderness survival to follow animals. But these aren't normal circumstances, and these ravens aren't normal birds. We hurry after the ravens, pushing through thick underbrush that tears at our clothes. The going is tough, and twice we have to backtrack when we hit bogs too deep to cross. The fog continues to form those strange column-like shapes around us, and more than once I think I see them reaching toward us, with wispy arms. After what feels like hours, we break through into a small clearing. In the center stands a large, flat rock covered in ancient carvings, circles and spirals and symbols I recognize from my grandfather's teachings. It's a sacred place, one I visited before. The ravens circle the rock once, then fly off, disappearing, into the fog. What is this place? Lily asks, approaching the rock carefully. A meeting place, I explain. My grandfather called it the Speaking Stone. Our people have gathered here for centuries. I run my hand over the carvings, feeling a slight warmth in the stone despite the cold air. As my fingers trace a spiral pattern, I notice something odd. The stone is humming, a low vibration I can feel in my bones. "Lily," I say slowly, "put your hand here." She does, and her eyes widen. "It's like it's alive." "I think the whole forest is alive," I reply, "and whatever is happening, this place is important." That's when we hear it, that wet cracking sound again, but louder now, much louder, coming from the trees just beyond the clearing. Lily and I back up against the stone as the sound gets closer. The fog parts slowly, and something moves at the edge of the clearing. Something big. A massive shape emerges from between two ancient pines, at least 10 feet tall, with a vaguely human shape, made of twisted branches, moss and bark. Its head is crowned with what look like deer antlers, but they're made of dead, bleached wood. Where a face should be, there are only hollow spaces, and that amber sap oozing like tears. The Wendigo has found us. I push Lily behind me as the creature takes a step into the clearing. My grandfather's stories didn't do it justice. The Wendigo is more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. It's made entirely of forest pieces. Twisted branches form its limbs. Thick bark covers its chest. Moss hangs from its shoulders like a cloak. Its fingers are long, sharp twigs that scrape against each other as it moves. The antlers on its head reach upward like broken, dead branches, tangled with what looks like animal fur and feathers. But it's the eyes that freeze my blood. Two hollow spaces filled with glowing amber sap that drips slowly down its wooden face. "Don't move," I whisper to Lily. "Don't run." The Wendigo tilts its head, studying us. It doesn't seem in a hurry. It moves with the slow patience of a tree growing towards sunlight. Each step makes that terrible wet cracking sound, like wood being bent until it breaks. "What do we do?" Lily's voice is barely audible, even right behind me. I have no idea. My knife seems useless against this thing. It must be 9 or 10 feet tall, its body thick as an old oak. Running seems pointless too. It knows these woods better than we ever could. The creature takes another step forward. The ground beneath its feet blackens and steams, like the earth itself is dying at its touch. "The stone," I say, suddenly remembering my grandfather's words. "Stay on the stone." We back up onto the flat rock, careful not to slip off its edges. The speaking stone has always been a sacred, protected place. I pray that protection still holds. The Wendigo stops at the edge of the rock. It reaches out one branch-like arm, but seems unable to extend it over the stone surface. A low groan comes from deep inside it, making the ground vibrate. The sound is like wind through hollow trees, but with an ancient anger behind it. "It can't get to us here," Lily whispers, hope in her voice. But even as she says it, I notice something worrying. The creature begins to circle the rock, testing its edges, looking for a way in. Thinking, this is no mindless monster. There's intelligence in those sap-filled eyes. "We can't stay here forever," I say, watching it circle. "Sooner or later we'll need to move." The Wendigo stops its circling. It reaches one long arm toward a nearby tree. To my horror, the tree's branches bend down toward the creature's hand, like they're being pulled by invisible strings. The Wendigo grabs a branch and simply pulls. The branch detaches with a terrible ripping sound. Then the creature hurls the branch directly at us. "Down!" I shout, pulling Lily flat against the stone. The branch whistles overhead, missing us by inches before crashing into the trees behind. This is bad, very bad. The creature might not be able to step onto the stone, but it can definitely attack us from a distance. And it has an entire forest of weapons at its disposal. "Uncle Malcolm," Lily tugs at my sleeve. "Your pouch." My medicine pouch. I'd almost forgotten about it. I pull it from around my neck, opening it carefully. Inside are the sacred herbs and the small wooden figure my grandfather carved. "He told me this would protect us," I say, more to myself than to Lily, but he never told me how. The Wendigo throws another branch. This one hits the edge of the stone and splinters. Sharp wooden pieces fly everywhere. One catches my arm, tearing through my jacket and cutting deep. Pain shoots up to my shoulder. I clamp my hand over the wound, but blood seeps through my fingers. But there's something wrong with the blood. It's mixed with something else, something amber and sticky like... Tresap, my arm burns like it's on fire. The wound is already turning an angry red, with black lines spreading outward like roots. I've never seen an infection set in so fast. Uncle! Lily tears a strip from her shirt to wrap around my arm. As she ties it, her eyes widen. The trees. Look, the trees surrounding our small clearing are moving, not swaying in the wind, actually moving their trunks, bending inward toward us. The circle of trees is getting smaller, closing in. The Wendigo watches, those amber eyes glowing brighter. I swear it's smiling, though it has no real mouth, just a crack in the bark that widens to reveal more glowing sap inside. My injured arm throbs with each beat of my heart. The pain makes it hard to think clearly. Blackness edges my vision, but I fight to stay conscious. The figure, I say to Lily, nodding at my open pouch. Take it out. She removes the small wooden carving, a crude human shape with antlers, similar to the Wendigo, but somehow different. The wood is warm to the touch, much warmer than it should be. My grandfather said it represents the forest spirit, I explained through gritted teeth. The real spirit, not the corrupted one. The Wendigo sees the figure and freezes. A sharp hiss escapes it, like steam from wet wood on a fire. It takes a step back. It's afraid, Lily whispers, but our small victory doesn't last long. The Wendigo raises both arms high above its head. The ground around the stone begins to shake. Roots break through the soil, writhing like snakes, reaching for the edges of our sanctuary. One root manages to slither onto the stone. When Lily steps on it, trying to push it back, it wraps around her ankle. She screams as it pulls, trying to drag her off the stone. I slash at the root with my knife. The blade cuts through, releasing dark sap that smells of rot. Lily scrambles back to the center of the stone with me. We need to do something, she says, panic in her voice. We can't just wait here. She's right. The stone won't protect us forever. The Wendigo is too powerful, the forest too much under its control. And my arm, the pain is getting worse, the black lines spreading up toward my shoulder. That's when I remember something else from my grandfather's stories, something about fire. My pouch, I say to Lily. There's a flint and steel in the side pocket. As she searches for it, I pull out some of the sacred herbs, sage, sweetgrass, and tobacco. My hands shake as I place them in a small pile on the stone. Here, Lily says, handing me the fire-starting tools. It takes 3 tries to get a spark, my injured arm nearly useless now. But finally, the herbs catch. A small flame grows and sweet-smelling smoke rises into the air. The effect is immediate. The Wendigo recoils, that hollow sound coming from it again, but now it sounds more like a shriek of pain. The roots retreating. From the stone, curling back into the ground. The smoke is hurting it, Lily says. Not just the smoke, I realize. The sacred herbs. And I look at the wooden figure in Lily's hand, then at my pack. An idea forms, desperate and dangerous, but maybe our only chance. I know what to do, I tell her. But we have to leave the stone. What? We can't. Lily looks at me like I've lost. My mind, we have to, I say firmly. There's a place my grandfather showed me when I was a boy. An ancient stone circle, not far from here. It's where the elders performed the binding ritual in his journal. But how will we get there? The Wendigo is still out there. I look at the burning herbs, the smoke still keeping the creature at bay. We make torches. The fire will protect us, at least for a little while. Using sticks from my pack and strips of cloth from our clothes, we make 2 small torches and light them from the burning herbs. The sacred smoke seems to make the flames burn with unusual colors, blues and purples mixing with the orange. Stay close to me, I tell Lily. No matter what happens, keep moving east. If we get separated, Keep going east until you find the stone circle. It looks like a ring of standing stones, half buried in the ground. We're not getting separated, she says firmly. I nod, though we both know it's a promise that might be impossible to keep. Ready? I ask. She takes a deep breath and nods. We step off the stone together, torches held high. The Wendigo shrieks again, a sound that makes my teeth vibrate. It retreats from our flames, but doesn't go far. It paces at the edge of the clearing, watching, waiting for our fire to die or for us to make a mistake. We push forward into the trees, heading east as best as I can tell without a working compass. The forest is even darker now, the fog thicker. Our torches cut through it, creating tunnels of light we walk through. Behind us, I hear the Wendigo following. It moves through the trees silently now, a shadow keeping pace. Sometimes I catch glimpses of those amber eyes watching from between trunks. It's herding us, I realize. Like a wolf with prey, the going is slow and difficult. The ground is treacherous. What was solid earth before is now boggy and unstable. Twice we nearly sink into sudden mud pools that weren't there moments ago. My injured arm hangs nearly useless at my side. The pain comes in waves now, along with a strange buzzing in my head. The infection is spreading, black lines now reaching my shoulder and creeping up my neck. In the torchlight, the exposed wound gleams with that amber sap mixed with my blood. How much farther? Lily asks, after what feels like hours of walking. Not far, I lie. Truth is, I'm not sure anymore. The forest has changed so much. Landmarks shifted or disappeared entirely. I'm navigating more by instinct now than anything else. As if sensing my uncertainty, the Wendigo makes its move. A massive root erupts from the ground between us, separating me from Lily. She screams as more roots burst upward, forming a wall that cuts us off from each other. Lily. I try to climb over the root wall, but it grows higher, branches and thorns sprouting to keep me back. Uncle Malcolm. Her voice comes from the other side, frightened but strong. What do I do? Keep going east, I shout. Find the stone. Circle, I'll meet you there. I can't leave you. You have to. Take your torch and go, now! I hear her hesitate, then the sound of her footsteps moving away. Good girl, smart girl. As soon as she's gone, the root wall collapses. The Wendigo stands where it had been, those amber eyes fixed on me. It knows I'm weakened. It knows I'm infected. I raise my torch higher, keeping it between us. You want me? I say to it. Come and get me. The Wendigo tilts its head, almost, curious. Then it raises one long arm, pointing deeper into the forest, away from the direction Lily went. It wants me to follow. Not a chance, I say, backing away slowly. The creature makes that hollow groaning sound again. The trees around me shudder in response. Branches reach down, grabbing at my clothes, my pack, my torch. I slash with my knife, cutting through them. But there are too many. My torch sputters as something wet drips from above, sap coating the flame. The fire weakens, threatening to go out. I have no choice. I turn and run, following the direction Lily took. I have to reach her. Have to reach the stone circle. The forest fights me every step. Roots rise to trip me, branches whip at my face. The ground itself seems to pull at my feet. Behind me, I hear the Wendigo coming, that wet cracking sound getting closer. My torch finally dies, plunging me into darkness. I keep moving, stumbling forward, one hand stretched ahead of me to avoid trees. I don't know how long I run, minutes or hours, impossible to tell. My lungs burn, my infected arm throbs with each heartbeat. The buzzing in my head grows louder, and with it come whispers, voices speaking in a language I almost understand. Just when I think I can't go another step, the trees thin. I break through into a small clearing, and there it is. The stone circle, 7 large stones arranged in a perfect ring, half buried in the forest floor. Ancient symbols cover their surfaces, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. In the center of the circle stands Lily, her torch still burning. Relief floods her face when she sees me. "Uncle Malcolm!" She runs toward me, but stops short, her eyes widening as she sees my face. Your eyes. I don't need to ask what she means. I can feel it. The infection has reached my eyes. They burn, and I know if I could see my reflection, they'd be glowing amber, just like the Wendigos. Stay back, I warn her, stopping at the edge of the stone circle. I'm infected. We can fix it, she insists. Tell me what to do. Before I can answer, the trees behind me part. The Wendigo steps into the clearing, its massive form silhouetted against the darkness. It's come for both of us now. I stumble into the stone circle, nearly collapsing. Lily helps me to the center, where her torch stands planted in the ground. The wooden figure, I gasp, and my pouch. We need them both. Lily pulls them from her pocket. Good, she kept them safe. What now? She asks. The Wendigo approaches the stone circle but stops at its edge, just like at the speaking stone. It paces, testing for weakness, looking for a way in. We don't have much time. My grandfather. I fight through the pain and the buzzing, voices in my head. He taught me the words, the ritual. Using the last of my strength, I take the wooden figure and place it in the center of the circle. From my pouch, I sprinkle the remaining sacred herbs around it in a smaller circle. Light them, I tell Lily. She uses her torch to set the herbs on fire. They burn with that same strange blue-purple flame. The Wendigo shrieks, a sound of rage and fear. It hurls branches and stones at us, most falling short or deflecting off some invisible barrier around the stones. As the smoke rises, I begin to speak the words my grandfather taught me. They're in Ojibwe, and I translate for Lily as I go. Spirit of the forest, hear us. We stand in the sacred circle, protected by the stones of our ancestors. We call you to bind this corrupted one, this death-bringer, this hunger that never ends. The Wendigo throws itself against the invisible barrier, making the very air ripple. Cracks appear in nothing, like the sky itself is breaking. Lily, I say urgently, you need to speak too. The ritual needs both of us. I teach her the words, and together we continue. By earth, by stone, by root and branch, we bind you. By the sacred herbs, by the living flame, we bind you. Return to your sleep beneath the ancient pines. Return to the darkness beneath the earth. The wooden figure in the center begins to glow with the same light as the stones. The Wendigo shrieks. Again, the sound cutting through my head like a knife. It's working, Lily says, hope in her voice. But then the barrier breaks. The Wendigo steps into the stone circle, towering over us, those amber eyes blazing with hatred. It reaches for me with those branch fingers, drawn to the infection in my blood. Finish it, I shout to Lily, pushing her behind me. Keep speaking the words. As the Wendigo's hand closes around my throat, lifting me off the ground, I pull out my last weapon, a small metal lighter from my pocket. With my remaining strength, I flick it on and touch the flame to the creature's moss-covered chest. The effect is instant and terrifying. The Wendigo's entire body erupts in flames, the fire spreading faster than natural fire should. It drops, me writhing and thrashing as the blue-purple flames consume it. Lily continues the ritual, her voice steady and strong. By the sacred fire, by the strength of our ancestors, by the power of the standing stones, we bind you. Sleep, rest, trouble us no more. The burning Wendigo shrieks one final time, a sound so painful I cover my ears. Then it collapses, its body crumbling to ash and embers. The fire grows brighter, consuming everything until I have to close my eyes against the glare. When I open them again, the Wendigo is gone. Only a black scorch mark remains in the center of the stone circle. And my arm. I look down in amazement. The black infection lines are retreating, fading like ink washing away. The wound itself still looks angry and red, but the amber sap is gone, replaced by normal blood. We did it, Lily says, her voice filled with disbelief and exhaustion. It's gone. I nod, too tired to speak. Together we sink to the ground in the center of the stone circle, the protective flames still burning around us. As dawn finally breaks through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor, I know the danger has passed, for now. But as my grandfather wrote, the binding is temporary. The Wendigo will sleep again beneath the sentinel pines, but for how long, no one can say. The forest has gone quiet once more. But this time, it's the normal quiet of early morning. In the distance, I hear a bird call. The first natural sound in what feels like days. Let's go home, I say to Lily. As we help each other up, prepared for the long walk back to the cabin, I notice something small sprouting from the ashes where the Wendigo fell. A tiny white pine seedling, its needles a healthy green instead of the sickly amber of the entity. Life returning. The forest healing itself. I touch the wound on my arm. It will never fully heal, I suspect. Some part of the forest will always be in my blood now. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Maybe it will help me protect this place and teach Lily to do the same when I'm gone. The sentinel pines stand, tall around us as we begin our journey home, their shadows no longer threatening but protective, watchful. And as the wind moves through their needles, I can almost hear them whispering, "Thank you." The walk back to the cabin takes much longer than it should. The forest no longer actively fights against us, but the paths remain twisted and unfamiliar. My arm throbs with a dull ache that never quite goes away. At least the black lines have stopped spreading. "Do you think it's really gone?" Lily asks as we climb over a fallen tree. Her face is scratched, her clothes torn, but her eyes are clear and steady. "Not gone," I tell her honestly, "just sleeping again, bound beneath the trees." The sun is high overhead by the time we finally see the cabin through the trees. It looks exactly as we left it, the door still closed, windows intact. It feels like we've been gone for days, but it's only been one long, terrible night. Inside, everything is undisturbed. The fire has died to cold ashes. I rebuild it while Lily finds the first aid kit to properly clean and bandage my arm. "This is going to scar badly," she says, examining the wound. The edges are puckered and red, with a strange amber tint to the skin around it. Not infection anymore, just changed. "Battle scars," I try to joke, but my voice comes out tired. We eat whatever food we can find. Crackers, canned beans, beef jerky, suddenly realizing how hungry we are. Neither of us has eaten since yesterday morning. After food and hot coffee, we both shower off the dirt, sap and blood. The hot water stings my wounds, but helps clear my head. When I look in the mirror, I notice something that makes my breath catch. Tiny flecks of amber in my brown eyes, not glowing like the Wendigo's, just there. A reminder. I dress in clean clothes and join Lily in the main room. She's sitting at the table with my grandfather's journal open in front of her, along with Dr. Emerson's notes that we took from the research station. "I think I understand better now," she says, as I sit across from her. "Dr. Emerson was right about the forest being connected underground. All the trees sharing one root system, like they're all parts of one big organism." I nod. The Ojibwe have always known that. We just express it differently in our stories. And the Wendigo, it's like an immune response. The forest defending itself. Or a cancer, I suggest. A part of the forest that turned bad, twisted. Something that should protect life became something that feeds on it instead. We sit in silence for a while, the fire crackling beside us. Outside, the wind has died down. The forest seems peaceful again, but I know better now. I will never look at these woods the same way. "We should try the radio again," I finally say. "Let the main station know we're okay." To my surprise, the radio works perfectly this time. Ranger Martinez answers immediately, concerned because we missed our regular check-in. "Everything okay up there, Reed?" he asks. "We had some weird weather patterns last night." I catch Lily's eye. How do I even begin to explain what happened? "We're fine," I say instead. "Had some trouble with the radio yesterday. Everything's back to normal now." Normal. The word feels strange in my mouth. After ending the call, we pack our few belongings. The service road should be clear now, and I want to get Lily back to town, back to safety. Despite what we accomplished last night, I don't fully trust the forest yet. As we load the truck, I notice new growth on the trees around the cabin, bright green buds that weren't there yesterday. The forest is renewing itself already, healing from the Wendigo's influence. "Will you tell anyone what happened?" Lily asks as we drive slowly down the service road. I think about it for a long moment. Who would believe us? She nods, understanding. "What about the other rangers? Shouldn't they know what's out there?" "I'll tell them what they need to know," I promise, in ways they'll accept. New safety protocols, warnings about certain areas of the park. The truck bumps over a rough patch, making my injured arm jolt painfully. The wound is seeping again, not blood this time, but a clear fluid with just a hint of amber color. "You should see a doctor for that," Lily says, noticing my wince. But we both know a regular doctor wouldn't understand this injury. There's nothing in medical textbooks about Wendigo infections or the living forest. "I'll be okay," I tell her. "It's part of me now." We reach the main road and turn toward town. With each mile, the events of last night start to feel more distant, more dreamlike. But the evidence is real. My wounded arm, the amber flecks in my eyes, and the quiet strength I see in Lily's face that wasn't there before. "Will you come back?" she asks, as houses begin to appear along the roadside. "To the cabin, I mean, after everything that happened." "It's my job," I say simply, "and my home. Those trees, they need someone who understands them, who can keep watch like a sentinel," Lily says. "Exactly." We drive in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lily speaks again, her voice thoughtful. "I want to come back too, next summer. Maybe I could work as a junior ranger." I glance at her, surprised. "After what you went through, you'd want to come back?" She nods firmly. "Someone needs to help you keep watch, and I want to learn more. About the forest, about our heritage, all of it." Pride swells in my chest. "I'd like that," I tell her honestly, as we pull into town, returning to the world of people and noise and normal problems. I can't help looking back one last time. In the distance, the ancient white pines stand tall against the sky, watchful, waiting. 5 years later, the summer breeze moves through the pine needles overhead, creating that familiar whispering sound. I pause on the trail, listening. After 5 years, I've gotten better at understanding what the forest is saying. "All clear?" Lily asks, coming up beside me. At 22, she's no longer the teenager who first faced the Wendigo with me. She's a full ranger now, having earned her degree in forestry and indigenous studies. The visitors love her nature walks, especially when she weaves in our traditional stories. "All clear," I confirm, touching the scar on my arm. It still aches sometimes, especially when the weather changes or when something in the forest is off. A built-in warning system. We continue our patrol, checking the boundaries of what we now call the protected zone, the area around the ancient stone circle where we performed the binding ritual. The other rangers think it's just an archaeological site we're preserving. Only Lily and I know the truth. The forest has changed in subtle ways since that night. The trees grow straighter, healthier. Wildlife has returned in abundance. Even the air feels cleaner, as if by binding the corrupted part of the forest spirit, we helped heal the whole. But we remain vigilant. Every season we perform the smaller rituals my grandfather documented, burning the sacred herbs, speaking the ancient words, maintaining the balance. The binding won't last forever. Nothing does. But it will hold for our lifetime, I believe, if we tend it properly. Look, Lily points to a young white pine growing at the edge of the trail. It's thriving. I smile, recognizing it as one of the seedlings we planted 2 years ago, taken from that first shoot that grew from the Wendigo's ashes. We've been carefully cultivating them, creating a new generation of sentinel pines to stand guard when the older ones eventually fall. As the sun sets, casting long shadows through the trees, we make our way back to my cabin. Our cabin now, since Lily moved into the spare room after college. The forest grows quiet around us, but it's a peaceful quiet, not the unnatural silence of that night. Sometimes visitors report seeing 2 figures walking the trails after dark, carrying torches when no rangers are on duty. The stories spread. Among the campers, ghost rangers they call us, guardians of the old growth forest. Let them talk. Let the stories spread. In a way, they're part of the protection too. Stories have power in these woods. The amber flecks in my eyes catch the fading light as I look out over the ancient pines. In the distance, a pair of ravens circles above the trees before settling on a high branch, watching, always watching. The sentinel pines stand tall as darkness falls, their endless whispered conversation continuing through the night. And now, after everything, I can finally understand what they're saying. We are here, we remember, we endure, and so do we. My name is Catherine Ward, and this is the story of what happened to me in Olympic National Park. I've worked as a ranger here for almost 10 years now, but nothing prepared me for what I found in the fog that day. The Olympic rainforest is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. Giant trees stretch up so high you can barely see their tops. Everything stays wet most of the time. The ground, the trees, even the air itself feels damp when you breathe it in. Moss covers almost everything, hanging from branches like green beards. Fallen trees become nurse logs, as we call them, with new plants and even new trees growing right out of them. That morning in June started like many others. I was walking, alone, on one of the less traveled paths. Usually, by mid-morning, the sun burns away the fog, but not today. I loved these quiet moments in the forest. The only sounds were water dripping from leaves and the occasional bird calling in the distance. It's the kind of silence that makes you feel small, but also part of something ancient and important. What struck me as odd was how cold it was. June in Washington isn't exactly warm, but this was different. I could see my breath coming out in white puffs, like it was the middle of winter instead of early summer. I zipped my jacket up higher and kept walking, instead of clearing as the day went on. The fog got thicker. Soon I could only see about 20 feet ahead of me on the trail. The trees appeared and disappeared like ghosts as I walked. The whole forest felt dreamlike, wrapped in that soft white blanket. I tried checking in on my radio, but all I got was static with occasional broken words coming through. Return to and unusual readings were all I could make out. It wasn't too concerning yet. Reception was always spotty in certain parts of the park. That's when I saw the elk. A massive Roosevelt elk stepped onto the path ahead of me, its huge antlers making it look like something from another time. But something was wrong. The animal just stood there, staring at me. Elk usually run when they see people, but this one watched me with eyes that seemed too aware, too focused. Then, without making a sound, it simply vanished into the mist. One moment there, the next gone. I continued down the research trail that wasn't marked on public maps. I was heading to the valley where 3 hikers had disappeared last fall. We never found them, not even a backpack or a boot, just gone. The case had been closed officially, but I couldn't let it go. Recent storms had changed everything about this area. A bridge I normally crossed was washed out completely. Streams now flowed where dry ground used to be. It was like walking through A place I knew well, but that had been rearranged while I wasn't looking. Then I felt it. Something changed in the air around me. It wasn't just the fog or the cold. It felt like the moments before a lightning storm, when the air gets heavy with electricity. The hair on my arms stood up. My skin tingled. Something was different about the forest today. Something was wrong. Should have turned around right then, gone back to the ranger station and brought more people, better equipment, but I didn't. I kept walking deeper into the fog, not knowing that with each step I was leaving behind the world I understood, the world of science and reason. Ahead of me lay something else entirely, and I was walking straight toward it. I guess I should tell you more about myself. I'm 44 years old now, though when I started working at Olympic National Park, I was much younger. Before becoming a ranger, I studied wildlife biology in college. I was especially interested in how predators hunt and behave: wolves, mountain lions, bears. Understanding these animals helped me track them and keep both them and people safe. But there's another reason. I became a ranger here. 15 years ago, my brother Tom disappeared in these same woods. He went hiking one foggy morning just like today and never came back. We searched for weeks. I led many of those search parties myself, but we never found a single trace of him. Not a footprint, not his backpack, nothing. Just gone, like he walked off the face of the earth. I still carry his pocket watch with me. It stopped at exactly 10:17 a.m. on the day he vanished. Sometimes I wonder if that was the exact moment something happened to him. I know it's silly, but I can't help it. I keep my grey hair cut short. Easier to manage when you're outdoors most of the time. People say my eyes never stop moving, always watching, always looking for anything out of place. I guess that comes from years of tracking and searching. "Catherine!" a voice called from behind me. "Wait up!" That was Dr. Marcus Powell, jogging to catch up with me on the trail. He's an anthropologist, 38 years old, with a neatly trimmed beard and glasses that kept fogging up in the damp air. He studies stories and legends from the local tribes. Marcus didn't really want to come today, but I convinced him. The tribes have stories about these woods, about the fog. Stories I used to think were just old tales to scare children. "You really think we'll find anything?" Marcus asked, breathing hard as he fell into step beside me. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But 3 people don't just vanish without leaving some kind of sign." I checked my pack one more time. I had my usual ranger gear plus some special equipment: a thermal camera for seeing heat signatures of animals or people, an audio recorder to document any unusual sounds, materials for making casts of footprints, and small bags for collecting samples. If there was anything to find out here, I was ready to document it properly. Over the years, I've become the person they call when hikers go missing. I can follow tracks that most people would walk right past. I know how to think like a lost person, where they might seek shelter or water. I can spot the small signs of human passage: a broken twig, disturbed moss, a scuff mark on a rock. My scientific training taught me to look for evidence, not jump to conclusions. When people reported strange lights in the forest or odd sounds at night, I always found the logical explanation: swamp gas, owls. The way sound carries oddly in the valleys, there's always a scientific answer if you look hard enough. At least that's what I always believed. The Quinault elders warned people to stay out of this valley during heavy fog, Marcus said quietly as we walked. They say the boundary between worlds gets thin and things can pass through from the other side. "And what do you think?" I asked. Him. Marcus adjusted his glasses. "I think every culture has stories about dangerous places and times. There's usually some kernel of truth behind them, even if it's just stay out of the fog because you might get lost." I nodded, but didn't say. What I was thinking, that after 15 years of searching for answers about my brother, I was starting to wonder if those old stories held more truth than I wanted to admit. As we walked deeper into the valley, The fog pressed in around us. The familiar forest suddenly felt like somewhere else, somewhere I'd never been before. My scientific mind was already cataloguing conditions, temperature, humidity, wind patterns. But another part of me, a deeper, older part, was whispering that some things can't be measured or explained, and we were about to face one of those things. Marcus and I had been walking for about 2 hours when I noticed something strange on the trail ahead. I held up my hand, signaling him to stop. "Look at this," I said, crouching down. There were footprints in the soft mud of the trail, human footprints, but something was very wrong about them. They simply started in the middle of the path, as if someone had dropped down from above. And just 10 steps later, they stopped. Completely. No tracks leading away to either side, just gone. "Could someone have jumped from that rock?" Marcus suggested, pointing to a nearby boulder. I shook my head. "It's too far. And look at how deep these are. Whoever made these was heavy, carrying a full pack probably." As I studied the footprints, I realized something else was wrong. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, not even the sound of wind in the trees. The only thing I could hear was a distant, rhythmic thumping noise. It reminded me of a heartbeat, but much too slow and much too loud to be human or animal. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Marcus nodded, his face pale. We continued forward more carefully now. That's when we saw the trees. Several of them massive. Trunks had strange symbols carved into their bark. The cuts looked fresh. Sap was still oozing from them like golden tears. "Are these from the Kino tribe?" I asked Marcus, tracing my finger near one of the symbols without touching it. "No," he said, taking photos with his camera. "I've never seen anything like these before. They don't match any known Native American symbol system I've studied." The air around us had changed too. There was a sharp smell, like after a lightning strike, mixed with something rotten underneath. The smell got stronger as we moved deeper into the valley. After another mile of hiking, the trail opened into a small clearing. What we found there made my blood run cold. It was a campsite. 3 tents set up around a stone fire ring. Backpacks leaned against tree trunks. A pot sat on a camp stove with the remains of what looked like mac and cheese dried inside. Sleeping bags were laid out, one of them unzipped as if someone had just gotten up. This had to be the camp of the 3 missing hikers, but it looked like they had just stepped away for a moment, not like they'd been missing for months. "This doesn't make sense," I said, examining everything carefully. "Nothing's been disturbed by animals. There's no weather damage. It looks like they just vanished in the middle of making dinner." Marcus was checking his equipment when he suddenly looked confused. He tapped his compass, then showed it to me. The needle was spinning wildly, around and around without stopping. I pulled out my GPS unit. It showed 3 different locations blinking on the screen, all supposedly our current position, but miles apart from each other. "Equipment malfunction?" Marcus suggested, but his voice shook slightly. "All of our equipment at once," I replied. Something was very wrong here. Marcus switched on his audio recorder and held it up, listening through headphones. His eyes suddenly went wide. "Catherine, listen to this," he said, unplugging the headphones so I could hear too. From the recorder came sounds, voices speaking or chanting in a language I'd never heard before. The words seemed to slide together with clicks and hums that didn't sound like they could come from a human throat. "Is that some kind of interference?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "This recorder is picking up sounds that aren't there. At least not sounds we can hear with our ears." My scientific mind was racing for explanations, but coming up empty. We continued searching the area around the campsite. That's when I spotted something up in a tree that made no sense at all. About 10 feet up, wedged in a fork between 2 branches, was the body of a deer. Not a small one either. A full-grown doe somehow lifted up and placed there. When we managed to get it down, the mystery deepened. The deer had no visible wounds, no claw marks, no bite marks, nothing. But it was completely drained of blood, light and dry, as if it had been preserved. "No animal could have done this," I said, my ranger training failing me completely. As the fog swirled around us, I took out my camera and started taking photos of the campsite, the symbols on the trees, everything. When I reviewed the pictures, I almost dropped the camera. In several of the photos, the fog wasn't just a formless mist. It had shapes in it, tall, human-like figures standing among the trees, figures that hadn't been visible when I took the pictures. "We need to head back," I said to Marcus, trying to keep my voice steady. "It'll be dark in a few hours." We packed up quickly and turned to follow our trail back to the ranger station. But the path we had taken to get here was gone. Instead of the familiar route, we found ourselves facing a section of forest I'd never seen before, with massive, ancient trees that weren't on any forestry survey I knew of. We were lost in a forest I'd worked in for 10 years, and nothing looked familiar anymore. "We need to find high ground," I told Marcus, trying to stay calm. "If we can get above this fog, maybe we can see where we are." We pushed through the unfamiliar forest, fighting against the thickening fog. That's when I saw them for the first time. Standing between the trees ahead were tall shapes in the fog. At first I thought they might be more trees or maybe even people. But as we got closer, I could see they were neither. They were impossibly tall and thin, like a person stretched out to twice their normal height. Their arms hung down almost to the ground, ending in long fingers that looked more like branches than hands. I couldn't make out any faces in the swirling mist that seemed to form their heads. "Marcus," I whispered, grabbing his arm. "Do you see them?" He nodded, his face white with fear. I felt it too, a wave of pure dread washing over me that had nothing to do with being lost. It was like the feeling of standing on the edge of a high cliff, but 100 times stronger. Every part of my body was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. "What are they?" Marcus whispered. My scientific mind had no answers. Nothing in my years of biology training or ranger experience could explain what we were seeing. The tall figures didn't come closer, but they weren't going away either. A low humming sound filled the air, making my head spin and my stomach turn. I had to lean against a tree to keep from falling over. "We need to move," I said, looking around frantically. The figures were appearing all around us now, but there was a gap to our left. "This way." As we moved, I noticed something strange. The figures weren't chasing us, but they were positioning themselves to leave only one path open, almost like they were herding us deeper into the valley. I took out my gun, standard issue for rangers in areas with large predators. When one of the figures moved too close, I fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed through the trees, but the bullet seemed to pass right through the nearest figure without affecting it at all. What happened next made my heart nearly stop. For just a moment, the figure's misty form changed. Instead of the tall, stretched shape, it looked like Tom, my brother. He seemed to stare right at me with the same eyes I remembered before, changing back to the tall, formless shape. "Did you see that?" I gasped. "See what?" Marcus asked, but I couldn't explain. My throat had closed up with shock and grief. The figures moved in impossible ways. They didn't walk. They glided over the ground like they were floating. Sometimes they seemed solid enough to leave impressions in the soil, and other times they passed right through trees and rocks like they were made of nothing but fog. I noticed something else too. When I looked directly at one, it would freeze in place. But the moment I looked away, I could see from the corner of my eye that it was moving again. And they weren't acting alone. They were coordinating, working together to keep us surrounded, but always leaving one direction open, the direction they wanted us to go. The fog was getting so thick now that I could barely see 10 feet ahead. I reached back to grab Marcus's hand so we wouldn't get separated. "Stay close," I said. But when I turned around, Marcus wasn't there. Just seconds ago, he had been right behind me. Now there was nothing but fog. "Marcus," I called out. I heard his voice answer, but it sounded far away, even though he'd been right next to me moments before. "Catherine, I can see you, but I can't reach you." His voice was fading, like he was being pulled away despite standing still. I tried to move toward his voice, but the fog shifted and changed around me. Trees that I had just passed now appeared in front of me again. Paths twisted and changed direction as I walked them. It was like the forest itself was rearranging around me. "The trees are moving," I whispered to myself, knowing how crazy it sounded. But when I turned my back on a large cedar and then looked again, it had shifted position. Nothing was staying where it should. That's when I realized what was happening. These things, whatever they were, could somehow control the fog, the forest, maybe even space itself in this valley. They were playing with us, separating us, confusing us. I remembered the stories Marcus had shared from the Quinault tribe. They called these woods haunted, said the boundary between worlds thinned in the heavy fog. I had always thought those were just stories to explain people getting lost. Now I wasn't so sure. I kept calling for Marcus, following the sound of his voice, which grew fainter with each response. Finally, after what felt like hours of searching, I found him. He was sitting on a fallen log, staring straight ahead. His eyes were open but didn't seem to focus on anything. When I touched his shoulder, he didn't react at all. "Marcus." I shook him gently. "Marcus, can you hear me?" He blinked slowly and turned to look at me, but something was wrong. His eyes reflected the dim light in an unnatural way, almost like an animal's eyes in the dark. When he spoke, his voice was flat and emotionless. "They showed me things, Catherine, things no one was meant to see." I pulled on his arm, trying to get him to stand up. "We need to keep moving. Can you walk?" He stood up like a sleepwalker, moving, only when I guided him. Whatever had happened when we were separated had broken something inside him. I now had a nearly catatonic man to protect along with myself. And all around us, moving in and out of the fog, the tall figures watched and waited. With Marcus barely able to walk on his own, I knew we needed a plan fast. The fog figures were all around us now, watching, waiting. I remembered seeing an old fire lookout tower on my map earlier. If we could reach it, we might get above the fog, maybe even get radio contact with the ranger station. "We need to go uphill," I told Marcus, though I wasn't sure he understood me. His eyes still had that strange, far-away look. "Just stay with me, okay?" I put his arm over my shoulder and started climbing. The hill was steep and slippery with moss and wet leaves. Every step was a struggle, especially supporting Marcus's weight. The tall figures followed us, always keeping their distance but never letting us out of their sight. The humming sound grew louder as we climbed, making it hard to think straight. My head pounded, and several times I almost lost my balance, but I kept going, one step, then another. I refused to give up. "We're going to make it out of here," I told Marcus. "Both of us." After what felt like hours of climbing, the trees finally. It thinned out, and I saw it. The old fire lookout tower standing on the ridge ahead of us. It was an old wooden structure built on tall stilts with a small cabin on top where fire spotters used to watch for smoke during the dry season. It hadn't been used in years, but it might be our only chance. Just as I felt hope rising, the fog seemed to rush up the hill behind us, bringing with it more of the tall figures than I had seen before. They were converging from all directions, closing in. "Almost there," I gasped, pulling Marcus toward the tower. The stairs leading up to the cabin looked old and rickety, but we had no choice. I started climbing, dragging Marcus with me, step by step. Halfway up, one of the boards broke under my foot. I slipped, nearly falling, but grabbed the railing just in time. My heart was hammering in my chest as I carefully tested each step before putting my weight on it. Finally, we reached the top and stumbled inside the small cabin. I slammed the door shut behind us, though I wasn't sure it would do any good against things that could walk through trees. The cabin was dusty, but still had some old equipment inside. A table, chairs, an old radio, and various tools hanging on the walls. I tried the radio first, but it was dead. No surprise there. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, and dark shapes moved within it. They were surrounding the tower. "They're coming," Marcus whispered. It was the first thing he'd said in hours that sounded like himself. I was frantically searching for anything that might help us when I noticed something strange. Marcus had taken his compass case out of his pocket, an old-fashioned metal one made of cast iron that had been his father's. When he held it toward the window, the fog outside seemed to recoil, pulling back from that spot. "Marcus," I said slowly, "do that again." He held up the compass case, and again the fog retreated from it slightly. A memory clicked in my brain, old stories about iron keeping away spirits and other supernatural things. I'd always thought they were just superstitions, but... "The iron," I said. "They don't like iron." I looked around the cabin with new purpose. There were old tools hanging on the walls, a hammer, nails, an axe, old metal brackets. "All made of iron or steel. Help me," I said to Marcus, grabbing the tools off the wall. "Put these by the windows, the door, anywhere they might try to come in." As we worked, placing metal objects around the cabin, the humming outside grew louder, more angry sounding. The fog pressed harder against the windows, and I could see the tall figures moving more frantically now. Just as we placed the last tool, an old iron poker, by the door, one of the windows shattered. Fog poured in, forming into one of the tall figures right before our eyes. I grabbed the hammer and swung it through the shape. The figure recoiled, making a sound like steam escaping a kettle. More windows broke. More fog poured in. Marcus and I stood back to back, holding our iron tools, swinging at the shapes as they tried to form inside the cabin. "We can't keep this up," I gasped. My arms were getting tired, and there were just too many of them. That's when I noticed the sky outside beginning to lighten. Dawn was coming. The fog was starting to thin ever so slightly as the first rays of sun hit it. "We just need to hold on till sunrise," I told Marcus. "Can you do that?" He nodded, his eyes clearer now, more determined. We fought for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, swinging our makeshift weapons at the fog shapes, forcing them back when they got too close. Slowly, the light outside grew stronger. The fog began to retreat, and with it, the tall figures. They were leaving, pulling back into the deeper forest where the fog lingered longest. All except one. It stood at the broken window, its form shifting and changing until it looked exactly like my brother Tom. Not the Tom I remembered from 15 years ago, but an older version, how he would look now if he were still alive. He chose to join us, the thing that looked like Tom said. Its voice sounded like rustling leaves and running water. "He walks the boundaries now. As you could, sister." I stepped forward, the hammer still in my hand. "What are you?" The false Tom smiled. "We are the in-between, not living, not dead. We walk in mist and shadow." "And the hikers?" I asked. "The ones who disappeared?" "They walk with us now," it said simply. Then it looked at the brightening sky. "We will meet again, Catherine Ward, when the fog returns." The figure dissolved back into mist and was gone, leaving behind only the broken windows and the rising sun. Marcus slumped to the floor, exhausted. I sat down next to him, my body aching, my mind trying to process everything that had happened. "Will anyone believe us?" Marcus asked quietly. I looked at him, then out at the forest below, now peaceful in the morning light. "I don't know. Would you have believed it before seeing it yourself?" He shook his head. "We made our way down from the tower when we were sure the fog was gone completely. The forest looked normal again. No moving trees, no impossible paths. My GPS worked, showing our location clearly. We followed it back to the ranger station, where a search team was just about to set out looking for us. I told them we got lost. In the fog, nothing more. Who would believe the truth? But I knew now what had happened to my brother all those years ago. and to those hikers. And I knew that when the fog returned, thick and unnatural, the tall ones would walk again. That was 5 years ago now. Marcus survived physically, but he never really came back from that forest. He doesn't talk anymore. He lives in a care facility in Seattle, where he spends his days looking out the window, especially when it's foggy. The doctors say he had some kind of mental break. They call it trauma-induced catatonia. I know better. As for me, I still work at Olympic National Park. I couldn't leave, not knowing what I know now. Sometimes I have what the doctors call seizures, moments where my vision blurs and I hear that strange humming sound again. They've done all kinds of tests on my brain, but can't find anything wrong. I've never told anyone the full story of what happened in the fog that day. Who would believe me? But I keep careful track of the weather patterns now. When the fog rolls, in thick and unnatural, I make sure no one goes into certain parts of the forest. I've marked those areas as unsafe due to erosion or closed for wildlife protection. My boss thinks I'm being overcautious. I let him think that. I still have my brother's pocket watch. Sometimes, when the fog is especially thick, the hands move again, just for a little while. I take it as a sign that Tom is near. The strangest thing happened last month. 2 hikers came into the ranger station, shaken and confused. They said they saw a woman walking in the fog with several tall figures. They described the woman perfectly, my height, my short gray hair, my ranger jacket. They even noticed the scar on my right hand from an old climbing accident. The problem is, I was at the main office that day, 50 miles away. There are records of me being there, people who talked to me. There's no way I could have been in the forest. So who, or what did those hikers see? I think I know. I think a part of me is already with them, walking in the fog between worlds. Just like a part of Tom stayed behind with his pocket watch. I've started to understand what the forest is now. It's not just trees and animals and hiking, trails. It's a place where the walls between worlds get thin sometimes, especially in the fog. A place where things can cross over. Things not meant to be seen by human eyes. I still go into the forest every day. It's my job, but I never go alone anymore. And when the fog rolls in thick and unnatural, I stay in the ranger station. I close the blinds. I don't look outside because I know they're out there, watching, waiting. The tall ones, the fog walkers, and sometimes, just sometimes, I hear my brother calling my name from the mist. One day I might answer. My name is James Holloway. I've been a ranger at Redwood National Park for almost 6 years now. This morning started like any other day. Peaceful, quiet, with that special kind of stillness you only find deep in the forest. The giant redwoods stood tall around me like they've done for hundreds of years. These trees are wider than most cars, reaching up so high you have to crane your neck to see their tops. This morning, a thick fog was winding between their trunks, making everything look dreamlike. I stopped on the trail to watch the sunlight break through the mist. Golden rays cut through the fog, lighting up little patches of the forest floor. Birds were singing their morning songs up in the canopy. That's one of my favorite parts of early patrol, just listening to the forest wake up. Near a small stream, with crystal clear water, I spotted a doe and her fawn. They were taking gentle sips, their ears twitching now and then, always on alert. I stood perfectly still, not wanting to scare them away. Moments like these are why I love this job. After everything I've been through, this peaceful wilderness feels like home. Then something strange happened. The birds suddenly stopped singing, not gradually like they do when they sense a hawk or other predator. They just stopped mid-song. All at once, the silence hit me like a physical thing. I looked around, feeling uneasy. The morning light was creating weird, long shadows between the trees. For a second, I could have sworn the shadows moved on their own, not matching up with the branches that should have made them. I clicked on my radio to report back to base, just out of habit really, Nothing but static came back. Great. That's what I get for being 12 miles from the ranger station with faulty equipment. Mental note: requisition a new radio when I get back. A red fox suddenly darted across the trail about 20 feet ahead of me. Nothing unusual there. We have plenty of foxes in the park. But this one stopped and turned back to look at me. Its stare was intense, like it was trying to tell me something. Then it bolted into the underbrush. I shivered as the temperature dropped suddenly. Not just a little cooler. I'm talking about 20 degrees in minutes. My breath started fogging in front of my face. Weather changes fast in the forest, but not like this. The trail ahead led into a narrow ravine with steep rock walls on both sides. Thick bushes and ferns grew along the path, so dense in places I could barely see through them. Not my favorite stretch of trail on a good day. Today, it looked especially unwelcoming. I hesitated before moving forward. Something felt off. The air had changed. There was a metallic taste in my mouth, like when you accidentally bite down on aluminum foil. The mist was getting thicker by the minute, swirling around my boots. I guess I should tell you a bit about myself. I'm 42 years old, though most days I feel older. Before becoming a ranger, I served as a Marine in Korea. War changes a man. I came back looking for peace, and these ancient woods seemed like the right place to find it. I reached into my shirt pocket and touched the photo I always carry. My wife Sarah and our little girl Emma. The edges are worn from how often I hold. It's 8 years since the fire took them while I was overseas, and the pain is still raw. Some nights I still wake up screaming, trying to run into a burning house that exists only in my nightmares. That's why I requested the most remote ranger post they had. Out here, nobody hears me on the bad nights. Nobody asks questions about the scar that runs from my left eye down to my jaw, a souvenir from my last mission. Nobody expects me to be okay. At least I have Rusty. The old German shepherd padded quietly beside me, occasionally sniffing the air. I found him at a shelter 3 years ago. He was already old then, but something in his sad eyes connected with me. We're both survivors, carrying our invisible wounds. He doesn't leave my side, not ever. I reached up to touch Sarah's wedding ring, which hangs on a chain around my neck. It's a habit when I'm stressed. The cool metal against my fingertips grounds me when my mind starts to drift to dark places. One thing I pride myself on is knowing this forest. I've walked every trail, followed every stream, and mapped most of the remote sections personally. I've got the whole area memorized, every ridge, every valley, every landmark. It saved my life more than once when storms hit without warning. My old captain used to say, my stubbornness was my best and worst quality. It's kept me alive in situations that should have killed me, from the frozen hills of Korea to wilderness emergencies where anyone else would have given up. But it's also why most of the other rangers keep their distance. Fine by me. I'm not here to make friends. Looking back, I realize now that all my experience, all my training, all my hard-earned wilderness skills, none of it prepared me for what was waiting in that mist. Not even close. I patted the side of my belt, checking my gear out of habit. Just the basics today: my hunting knife with the antler handle, a metal canteen full of water, my now useless compass, and a small first aid kit. Not much, but I've made do with less. With Rusty by my side, I took a deep breath and continued. Down the trail into the ravine. The mist seemed to part before me, then close again behind, like it was swallowing us whole. Little did I know then what was waiting for us deeper in the forest. The deeper Rusty and I went into the ravine, the stranger things became. The fog had gotten so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. I kept one hand on Rusty's back just to make sure we didn't get separated. That's when I spotted something that made me stop in my tracks. There, in a patch of soft mud by the stream, was a set of footprints. Human footprints, but something was wrong with them. For one thing, they were huge, at least 18 inches long. and each print clearly showed 6 toes, not 5. I crouched down to look closer. They were fresh, the edges still sharp in the mud. Whatever made these had passed through very recently. "What do you think, boy?" I whispered to Rusty. He sniffed the prints and backed away, whining softly. That wasn't like him at all. Rusty was usually fearless. Standing up, I noticed something else that sent a chill down my spine. The forest had gone completely silent, and I mean silent in a way I'd never experienced before. No birds, no insects buzzing, not even the sound of leaves rustling, though I could see the branches moving in the wind above us. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the entire forest. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat and kept moving. We needed to finish our patrol and get back to the station before dark. About half a mile further, I saw something that made me freeze. Several of the redwoods had deep gashes torn into their trunks, not low down where a bear might have. Clawed them, but a good 8 feet up. The cuts were deep, 3 parallel lines that had ripped through the thick bark like it was paper. Whatever made these marks was big, really big. The air had changed too. There was a smell now, something so foul it made my eyes water, like rotting meat mixed with wet animal fur, but stronger than anything I'd ever smelled before. I pulled my bandana up over my nose, but it didn't help much. As we rounded a bend in the trail, something caught my eye. A backpack was propped against a tree just off the path. It looked fairly new, not something that had been abandoned for months. The zipper was open, and some of the contents had spilled out onto the ground. I approached cautiously, calling out, "Hello, Park Ranger, anyone there?" No answer came back, just that unnatural silence. The backpack had a university logo on it. Probably belonged to one of the research teams that sometimes work in the park. I knelt down and checked inside. Typical camping gear, some energy bars, a water bottle, and a journal. I picked up the small notebook. The cover was dirty, but otherwise intact. I flipped it open to the last entry. The handwriting started neat, but became more frantic toward the bottom of the page. The final line simply read, "They're watching, eyes in the mist, always watching, don't look back." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I put the journal in my pocket, thinking I should turn it in when I got back. Maybe it would help find the missing researcher. I pulled out my compass to check our heading back to the station. The needle spun wildly, rotating in complete circles without stopping. I tapped it, shook it, but nothing helped. The compass was useless. "Great," I muttered, "just great." Rusty suddenly went rigid beside me. A low growl rumbled in his chest, his hackles standing straight up. I'd never seen him like this. His whole body was trembling, but not from cold, from fear. "What is it, boy?" I whispered, reaching for my knife. He was staring into the mist at something I couldn't see. The growl grew louder, but he wouldn't move forward, not even when I gently tugged on his collar. That's when we found it. Just off the trail lay the body of a large elk. It was fresh. Couldn't have been dead more than a few hours. But the way it was killed, I've been a hunter most of my life, and I've never seen anything like it. The rib cage was torn open with what looked like surgical precision. Several organs were missing, but there was hardly any blood on the ground. No predator I know hunts like that. Not bears, not mountain lions, nothing. The mist seemed to be getting even thicker now, if that was possible. And it was moving strangely, swirling and curling in ways that didn't match the direction of the wind, almost like it had a mind of its own. I decided we'd seen enough. Time to head back to the station and report what we'd found. I turned around, confident I could retrace our steps, even without the compass. But after walking for 20 minutes, nothing looked familiar. The trail we'd followed in had simply vanished. Instead of the ravine with its steep walls, we were in a part of the forest I'd never seen before. The trees were older here, massive and twisted in strange ways. None of this matched any of my maps. "This is impossible," I said out loud, trying to keep the panic from my voice. "We couldn't have gotten that far off track." Rusty pressed against my leg, still growling softly at something in the distance. I took a deep breath. Panicking wouldn't help. I'd been lost in the wilderness before and always found my way out. This would be no different. Even if I had to spend the night in the forest, I had the skills to survive. But deep down, a voice was telling me this was different. This wasn't just being lost. Something was very wrong with these woods. And I had the awful feeling we were being watched from all sides. Little did I know we weren't alone in the mist. And whatever was out there, it knew my name. I stumbled forward through the thickening mist, one hand still resting on Rusty's back. The cold had seeped into my bones by now. My breath came out in white puffs that joined the fog around us. That's when I saw it. About 30 feet ahead, a shape appeared in the mist. At first I thought it was just another tree, but then it moved. It was tall, at least 9 feet, with long, thin limbs that seemed too long for its body. The mist swirled around it, making it hard to see clearly, but its eyes, I could see those perfectly, 2 yellow orbs that glowed like they had their own light inside them. I froze. Every instinct in my body screamed danger. Rusty saw it too. He stopped growling and instead made a whimpering sound I'd never heard from him before. The thing didn't move. It just stood there, watching us. I slowly reached for my knife, though some part of me knew it wouldn't be much help against whatever this was. "Hey!" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Identify yourself." The shape tilted its head slightly, almost like it was curious. Then it took a step back and faded into the mist. Gone. But I still felt watched. The feeling crawled up my spine like ice water. Not just from one direction, from everywhere. Like a dozen pairs of eyes were on me from every side. Then I heard it. A voice calling from somewhere in the fog. "James! Help me, James!" My blood turned to ice. It was Sarah's voice, my dead wife's voice. "James, please, I'm trapped. Help me." The voice came from my left now, deeper in the woods. Then from behind me, then from the right. The same plea moving around us in a circle. "That's not possible," I whispered, my hands shaking. "You're not real." I backed away slowly, pulling Rusty with me. We needed to run, but which way? Every direction looked the same in the thick fog. I picked a path and started moving faster, trying to put distance between us and whatever that thing was. But every time I thought we were getting away, the tall shape would appear again in the mist ahead of us, forcing us to change direction. It was herding us, like a sheepdog with sheep, driving us deeper into unknown territory. Finally, I'd had enough. The next time I saw the shape, I charged toward it, knife raised. "Leave us alone!" I shouted, slashing at the figure. My knife passed right through it like it was cutting smoke. The blade met no resistance at all, but the shape solidified just enough for me to get a better look at it. What I saw will haunt me forever. Its skin was pulled tight over a skeleton frame, grey-white like old bone. Patches of dirty, matted fur grew in clumps across its body. Its face was the worst part, almost human, but stretched and wrong, with too many teeth crowded into its grinning mouth. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. The creature moved in ways that made no sense. Sometimes it seemed to float above the ground. Other times it dropped to all fours like an animal, joints bending in impossible directions. "James! Why did you leave us in the fire, James?" Sarah's voice again. Then Emma's. "It hurts, Daddy. Why won't you help us?" I covered my ears, but the voices came from inside my head now. "You're not them!" I shouted. "You're not real!" The thing let out a sound then, a shriek so high and terrible it felt like needles in my ears. The pain drove me to my knees. Rusty howled beside me. When I looked up, the ground between Rusty and me split open. A ravine appeared that hadn't been there seconds before, separating us. Rusty barked desperately from the other side, backing away as the crack in the earth widened. "Rusty! Stay!" I called out. "Stay there, boy!" But he turned and ran into the fog, disappearing from sight. I was alone now, I got to my feet and ran in the opposite direction. The trees seemed to close in around me. Their branches reached down like arms, catching on my jacket, scratching my face. I had to duck and weave to avoid them. Wait, trees don't move like that. Do they? But these were. Or maybe the fog was making me see things. Either way, I was trapped in a nightmare that kept getting worse. I ran until my lungs burned. Behind me, I could hear something moving through the forest. Not with the clumsy noise a human makes. This was almost silent except for an occasional branch snapping under its weight. It was hunting me now. The voices continued, using my family against me, crying for help, blaming me for not saving them. Each word cut deeper than any knife could. The forest I knew so well had become a maze. Nothing looked familiar. Paths appeared and disappeared in the mist. I'd climb a hill only to find myself back where I started. I stopped for a moment, leaning against a tree to catch my breath. That's when I heard it, far in the distance, almost too faint to hear. Barking. Rusty was barking. It was the first real thing I'd heard in what felt like hours. A lifeline to reality. I pushed off from the tree and headed toward the sound. Whatever this thing in the mist was, whatever tricks it was playing, I wasn't going to let it win. I was going to find my dog, and we were going to get out of these woods. Little did I know the real nightmare was just beginning. The barking grew louder as I pushed through the forest. My legs were heavy, and my side ached, but I kept going. I had to find Rusty. As I ran, my mind raced. I needed a plan, not just to run blindly through the woods. This thing, whatever it was, seemed to know the forest better than I did. It was toying with me, leading me wherever it wanted. Then I remembered something from years ago. On my first survey of this area, I'd found a strange rock formation deep in the forest, a half-circle of tall stones that looked almost man-made, like a smaller version of Stonehenge. The rocks formed a natural trap, with only one way in or out. If I could somehow lure the creature there, but where was I now? And where was that formation? In the swirling mist, I'd lost all sense of direction. I stopped and looked around. To my right, the ground rose sharply into a steep cliff face about 50 feet high. I didn't recognize it, but it gave me an idea. If I could climb up there, I might get above the mist, see where I was. And maybe the creature couldn't follow me up the sheer rock. Rusty's barking seemed to come from somewhere near the base of the cliff. That made my decision easy. I headed for the rock face, moving as quietly as I could. The thing in the mist seemed to be behind me still, but I couldn't be sure. It moved so quietly. When I reached the cliff, I began to climb. Fortunately, the rock had plenty of handholds. I'd done some climbing in Korea during the war, and those skills came back to me now. Up and up I went, the mist thinning a bit as I climbed higher. I was about halfway up when I heard that awful shriek again. Looking down, I saw the creature at the base of the cliff. It was staring up at me with those glowing yellow eyes. Then it began to climb too. Its long limbs made it faster than me, much faster. Come on, I muttered to myself, scrambling upward with all my strength. I was just reaching for another handhold when I felt something grab my ankle. A burning pain shot through my leg as the creature's claws dug into my calf. I kicked wildly with my other foot and connected with something solid. The grip loosened just enough for me to pull free. I didn't look back as I climbed the last 15 feet and hauled myself over the top edge. My leg was bleeding badly, but I couldn't stop to deal with it now. From up here, I could see better. The mist was thinner, and I could make out landmarks in the forest below. There, about half a mile away, was the stone circle I'd been thinking of, and not far from it I could see a small moving shape that had to be Rusty, still barking his head off. A clawed hand appeared at the edge of the cliff. The creature was almost up. I turned and ran along the top of the ridge, hoping it would follow me and not go after Rusty. My wounded leg sent spikes of pain up my body with each step, but fear pushed me forward. The ridge sloped down eventually, bringing me back to the forest floor. The stone circle was close now, and I could hear Rusty clearly. "Rusty!" I called out. "Here, boy!" I heard an answering bark, closer now. The sound gave me new energy. I wasn't alone in this nightmare. The mist parted briefly, and I saw the stone. Circle ahead. 6 tall rocks arranged in a horseshoe shape, with the open end facing me. Perfect. Just as I remembered it. A plan formed in my mind. It was desperate, probably stupid, but it was all I had. I reached the clearing where the stones stood. In the center was an old fire pit from when this had been a camping spot years ago, before this section of the park was closed to the public. I quickly gathered as many dry sticks and branches as I could find and piled them in the fire pit. From my pocket, I took out my emergency matches. Only 3 left, and they'd be damp from all the mist. I'd need to be careful. Behind me, the creature shrieked again, closer now. "James, why are you running from me?" Sarah's voice called from the mist. "Don't you love me anymore?" I gritted my teeth and ignored it, focusing on my task. Rusty burst into the clearing, limping but alive. His fur was matted with blood on one side, but his eyes were alert. He ran to my side, pressing against my leg. "Good boy," I whispered, my eyes scanning the mist for any sign of the creature. It didn't keep us waiting long. The tall, skeletal shape appeared at the edge of the clearing, moving slowly now, almost cautiously. It stopped at the entrance to the stone circle, as if reluctant to enter. That's when I noticed something strange. The creature kept its distance from the fire pit, even though there was no fire yet. Could it be? I struck one of my precious matches and touched it to a piece of dried birch bark. The bark caught immediately, flames spreading to the smaller twigs. The creature hissed and backed away slightly as the fire grew. It was afraid of fire. Hope sparked inside me for the first time since this nightmare began. I added more wood to the growing flames, but I needed more than just this small campfire. I needed a weapon. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around a thick branch, creating a makeshift torch. The material was mostly cotton. It would burn well once it caught. As I worked, the creature began to circle the stone formation, looking for another way in, but there wasn't one. The stones were too close together for its large form to slip. Between, I unscrewed my canteen and poured some water into my cupped hand, then splashed it on my injured leg, washing away enough blood to see the wound. 3 deep gashes, but not as bad as I'd feared. I'd live. If I survived the next few minutes, I lit my torch from the fire. The jacket caught quickly, flame running up the branch. "Come on then," I shouted at the creature. "You wanted me? Here I am." It shrieked in response, a sound of rage and hunger. Then it charged into the stone circle. I stood my ground, torch held out in front of me. The creature slowed as it approached the flame, then began to circle me, looking for an opening. I remembered what I'd learned in Korea. When outnumbered or facing a stronger enemy, you don't need to win. You just need to survive. I thrust the torch toward the creature, forcing it back. Then I threw the remaining matches into the fire pit to keep it burning strong. The creature lunged suddenly, trying to get around the torch. Its arm shot out impossibly long and caught me across the chest. The blow sent me sprawling backward, the torch flying from my hand. I scrambled to my feet as the creature advanced. The torch had landed a few feet away, still burning. I lunged for it. At the same time, the creature leaped toward me. Time seemed to slow down. I grabbed the torch and rolled onto my back, holding it up just as the creature landed on top of me. The burning jacket pressed against its chest. For a second, nothing happened. Then the creature burst into flames. The fire spread across its body with unnatural speed, consuming the matted fur and papery skin. The creature reared back and let out a scream unlike anything I'd heard before. Not just one voice, but dozens, all crying out in agony. The sound was so terrible I had to cover my ears. The burning thing thrashed and spun, trying to put out the flames, but the fire only grew stronger, engulfing it completely. I crawled backward, away from the heat. Rusty pressed against me, whimpering. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared in my life, the creature collapsed into ash. The flames died down to nothing. The mist that had filled the forest began to thin and blow away in the evening breeze. Sat there breathing hard, not quite believing it was over. I looked down at Rusty, his loyal eyes staring back at me. "We made it, boy," I whispered, scratching behind his ears. "We made it." My leg was still bleeding, and I had cuts and bruises all over. Rusty was injured, too. We needed to get back to the ranger station for first aid. But for the first time in hours, I knew exactly where I was. The clearing with the stone circle was marked on my maps, and without the unnatural mist, I could see the North Star appearing in the darkening sky. We had a long walk ahead of us, and night was falling. But we were alive, and that was enough for now. I put the last of the wood on the fire pit to keep it burning a while longer, then helped Rusty to his feet. Together, we limped out of the stone circle and started the long journey home. 3 months have passed since that night in the forest. My leg healed, leaving 3 long scars to match the one on my face. Rusty recovered too, though he's a bit more cautious on our walks now. I never filed an official report about what happened. Who would believe me? I told them I got attacked by a bear, got turned around in the fog. Simple, believable. They found the missing researcher 2 days later, alive but unable to speak. The doctors say he might never talk again. Whatever he saw out there broke something inside him. I requested a transfer to a different part of the park, but they needed someone experienced in my sector. So I stayed. Life has mostly returned to normal. I still walk my routes, check the trails, help lost hikers, but things are different too. I wake up most nights hearing Sarah's voice calling from outside my cabin window. It sounds so real, so much like her, that sometimes I catch myself getting out of bed before I remember. The forest near my cabin falls silent whenever the fog rolls in. No birds sing, no squirrels chatter. Even the insects go quiet, like they're all holding their breath, waiting. Rusty feels it too. He growls at the mist, hackles raised, eyes fixed on shapes I can't quite see. I keep a fire burning all night when the fog comes, just to be safe. The locals have stories, old legends about the woods that I never paid much attention to before. Now I listen. They talk about a spirit that lives in the mist, something that was here long before the first settlers came. Something that hunts by taking the shape of what you love most. I don't know what it was that I faced in those woods. Maybe it was just a bear, and my mind played tricks on me in the fog. Maybe I hit my head when I fell and imagined the whole thing. But sometimes, when I'm alone on patrol and the mist starts to gather between the ancient redwoods, I feel those yellow eyes watching me again. And I hear Sarah's voice, just a whisper on the wind. "I'm still waiting, James. I'm still here." I touch the wedding ring hanging around my neck and walk a little faster, Rusty pressed close against my leg. Some questions are better left unanswered. Some things are better left alone in the mist. But I can't help wondering if next time the fire will be enough to save me. My name is Victor Ramirez. I've been a park ranger at Carlsbad Caverns National Park for almost 8 years now. There's something about these caves that feels like home to me. The huge limestone rooms stretching into darkness, the quiet that wraps around you like a blanket. It's peaceful in a way the world above just isn't. Tonight started like any other shift. I waved goodbye to the last tour group as they headed up to the surface. An older lady with a bright blue hat told me to be careful down here all alone. I just smiled. After all, I've walked these paths hundreds of times. The caves and I, we understand each other, or at least I thought we did. As the voices faded and the elevator hummed its way up to the visitor center, I stood in the main chamber. People call it the big room, and for good reason. It's massive, like a natural cathedral carved from stone over millions of years. The permanent lights we've installed cast a soft glow on the formations, highlighting the stalactites hanging from the ceiling like stone icicles. Each one grows drop by drop, taking centuries to add just a tiny bit of length. I often think about that when I'm feeling impatient with life. These caves take their time. Maybe we should too. I was making notes on my clipboard when I felt it. A strange vibration coming through the floor. Not the usual kind, like when a group of excited kids stomps through or when there's minor seismic activity. This was different. Rhythmic. Almost like something was tapping. I put my clipboard down and placed my palm flat against the cool limestone. There it was again. Tap, tap, tap. Too even to be natural. Probably just water dripping somewhere. I said out loud, my voice bouncing back at me from the walls. But I didn't believe it, not really. Standing up, I noticed the shadows cast by the formations seemed off somehow. Maybe it was just being alone down here, but I could swear they were moving in ways that didn't match the still formations. Just at the edge of my vision, I'd catch movement, but when I turned to look directly, everything was normal. I reached for my radio, suddenly wanting to hear another human voice. Surface, this is Ramirez. Just checking in before I make my final rounds. The radio crackled, and the voice of Jenny, tonight's surface coordinator, came through. Copy that, Victor. Everything quiet tonight? Yeah, all good. I didn't mention the strange vibrations or the moving shadows. It sounded crazy even in my own head. Great. Remember we have that science team coming in tomorrow for the North Passage survey. Right. The new chamber. I'll make sure everything's prepped. I clipped the radio back to my belt, feeling a little better. The radio was my lifeline. 3 miles of twisting cave passages and 750 feet of solid rock separated me from the surface station. But that little device kept me connected. I turned toward the Batcave section, expecting to see the colony getting ready for their nightly exodus to hunt insects. Normally, they're like clockwork, an organized chattering mass preparing to stream out into the night sky. But tonight they were agitated, flying in chaotic patterns, some even bumping into each other. That wasn't normal bat behavior at all. "What's got you guys so worked up?" I whispered, watching them with concern. "Animals can sense things we can't. Earthquakes, storms, other things." I shook that thought away and checked my watch. Time to walk the North Passage to make sure all was ready for tomorrow's survey team. This area wasn't on the regular tour route. It led to a chamber we'd only discovered after some small earthquakes last month had shifted things around down here. The tremors had changed water flow patterns, opened up new cracks, and revealed a room nobody knew existed. Tomorrow's team would be the first to properly document it. As I walked toward the North Passage, I felt the air change. The caves maintain a pretty stable temperature year-round, one of their defining features, but the air flowing from the direction of the North Passage felt wrong, cold, damp in a way that made my skin crawl. I zipped up my Park Service jacket and switched on my flashlight, even though the tourist pathway still had permanent lighting. The beam cut through the darkness ahead, highlighting formations in stark white light. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, the sound echoing strangely. I stepped carefully around a pool of crystal-clear water, my reflection looking back at me with concerned eyes. Something wasn't right down here tonight. I've spent enough time underground to know when the cave feels different, and everything about tonight felt wrong. I stood at the entrance to the North Passage, my flashlight beam disappearing into the darkness ahead. Behind me was the safety of the tourist route, the known world of mapped passages and electric lights. Ahead was the path to the newly discovered chamber, a place no modern human had properly explored yet. I took a deep breath of the cold, strange-smelling air and stepped forward into the darkness. After all, it was my job to make sure everything was safe for tomorrow's survey team. I just wish I'd paid more attention to how the shadows moved when I wasn't looking directly at them. or how the vibrations in the floor seemed to be getting stronger with each step I took toward the North Passage. But hindsight, as they say, is always clearer than the beam of a flashlight in a dark cave where something waits that shouldn't be there. I wasn't always a cave ranger. 5 years ago, I was climbing mountains, not exploring what's under them. I worked search and rescue in the Rockies, pulling lost hikers and injured climbers from dangerous spots. I liked the open sky, the wind on my face, and the feeling that I was helping people on their worst days. But then came the accident. A college student got trapped in a narrow gap between rocks during a storm. I was the one who went in after him. The space was so tight I had to take off my safety gear to squeeze through. I can still hear the rain pounding above us, still feel the cold rock pressing in from all sides as I inched closer to his scared voice. I almost had him. Our fingertips touched, then the ground shifted beneath us. I made it out. He didn't. For months after, I couldn't even look at a mountain without feeling sick. Tight spaces made me panic, a new fear I'd never had before. Claustrophobia, the doctors, he called it. Pretty ironic for someone who now works in caves, right? But that's exactly why I came here. I needed to face that fear, to control it instead of letting it control me. In caves, every space is mapped, every path is known. There are no sudden storms, no unpredictable weather. Just quiet darkness that never changes, or at least, that's what I thought until tonight. I reached up and touched the small stone pendant, hanging from my neck, a smooth river rock from the last climb I ever did with my dad before cancer took him. He always said rocks were the most patient teachers. They'd seen everything and had all the time in the world to wait for us to learn their lessons. "What are you trying to teach me tonight?" I whispered to the cave walls. The beam of my flashlight caught movement ahead. A human figure. "Hello?" I called out, my voice bouncing back from multiple directions. "Victor, is that you?" A woman stepped into my light, shielding her eyes. Dr. Sophia Grant, the geologist who'd been studying the caverns for the past year. She was supposed to be part of tomorrow's survey team, not down here tonight. "Sophia, what are you doing here already?" I asked, lowering my light so it wouldn't blind her. She smiled, but I could tell something was off. Her normally calm face looked tense. "I wanted to get a head start on the new chamber survey. The university's pushing for preliminary findings by the end of the month." Her flashlight beam was steady in her hand, a high-end model similar to mine. Like me, Sophia didn't take chances with equipment. In caves, your gear isn't just convenience. It's survival. "You shouldn't be down here alone," I said, though I wasn't exactly following that rule myself. "Neither should you," she shot back with a half-smile. "But I figured with your knowledge of these caves, we'd be fine if we ran into each other." She wasn't wrong. I'd explored every mapped inch of this system. When tourists got turned around or confused, I was usually the one who found them. Last summer, a family of 4 wandered off the main path, and I tracked them down in less than 20 minutes. The cave talks to me in ways others don't hear. The subtle changes in airflow, the way sounds bounce differently in various chambers. "Did you feel those vibrations earlier?" I asked. She nodded, her expression growing serious. "Yes, not typical seismic patterns at all. That's part of why I came down early, wanted to set up some equipment to monitor it." I checked my watch, then my equipment one more time out of habit. Primary light, backup light, extra batteries, climbing gear, first aid kit, water, protein bars, detailed map, radio, everything secure and ready. I was just heading to check out. "The entrance to the new chamber," I said. "Make sure it's safe for tomorrow's full survey. Want to come along?" "That's exactly where I was headed," Sophia said, falling into step beside me. As we walked deeper into the North Passage, I felt a strange mix of comfort and unease. Having another person with me was reassuring, especially someone as knowledgeable as Dr. Grant. But something still felt wrong about the cave tonight, and now 2 of us were heading toward whatever was causing that feeling. "You've been down here hundreds of times, right?" Sophia asked as we carefully picked our way around a series of delicate formations. More times than I can count, I replied, ducking under a low-hanging stalactite. Solo explorations, mostly. There's something peaceful about being the only human in these ancient spaces. Not feeling very peaceful tonight, though, is it? She asked quietly, her eyes meeting mine in the glow of our flashlights. So she felt it too. That confirmation sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool cave air. No, I admitted, it's not. We were about to enter chambers no modern human had fully documented. Despite all my experience, despite the state-of-the-art equipment hanging from my belt and in my pack, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something we weren't prepared for. I touched my dad's stone pendant again and took a deep breath. Whatever was waiting ahead, I'd faced fears before. I'd overcome them. We would be fine. At least that's what I told myself as we approached the narrow passage that would lead us to the newly discovered chamber, a place the cave had kept secret until now. Ready? I asked Sophia, my flashlight illuminating the dark opening ahead of us. She nodded, her face set with determination. Let's go. Together, we stepped into the unknown darkness, our lights cutting thin beams through the heavy black air. The vibrations beneath our feet grew stronger with each step forward. The passage narrowed as we moved deeper, forcing us to walk single file. I led the way, with Sophia close behind. Our flashlight beams bounced off the wet walls, creating dancing shadows that seemed to follow us. "Hold up," I said, suddenly stopping. My light had caught something on the ground that made my heart skip a beat. "What is it?" Sophia asked, coming up beside me. I crouched down, shining my light on the soft clay floor. There, pressed clearly into the wet earth, were tracks unlike anything I'd ever seen in these caves. 3-toed impressions about the size of my hand, with what looked like claw marks at the tips. Could be a new species, Sophia suggested, though her voice wavered slightly. Maybe something that's lived isolated down here for generations. I nodded, but a voice in the back of my mind whispered that no known cave creature made tracks like these. Not in New Mexico, not anywhere. "Let's take some photos and keep moving," I said, pulling out my phone. The flash lit up the tracks for a moment, making them look even stranger against the red clay. As we continued walking, I noticed something else odd. The normal sounds of the cave, the distant drip of water, the faint echo of our footsteps, the subtle shifting of rock had disappeared. Instead, a heavy silence pressed around us, seeming to swallow every noise we made. Our footsteps fell dead, without echoes. Our breathing seemed muffled. "Victor," Sophia whispered, her voice tight, "the acoustics are all wrong." She was right. Caves have their own voice, their own way of carrying sound. This silence wasn't natural. It felt deliberate. We turned a corner, and my flashlight beam swept across the wall. I stopped dead in my tracks, grabbing Sophia's arm to halt her too. "That's not possible," I breathed. Carved into the limestone wall were petroglyphs, ancient drawings that looked like tall, thin figures with too many limbs hunting what were clearly meant to be humans. The figures were reaching down from above, their long fingers stretching toward the smaller human shapes. "These weren't here last week," I said, moving closer to examine them. "I mapped this section myself. These walls were blank." Sophia ran her fingers over the carvings. "These don't look fresh. They look ancient." My skin broke out in goosebumps. How could ancient carvings appear on a wall I'd personally examined just days ago? "Let's keep moving," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. The air changed as we moved deeper, growing thick and heavy with a strange smell, like ammonia mixed with something metallic and organic. It reminded me of a butcher shop, but with something else underneath. Something wrong. "Do you smell that?" Sophia asked, covering her nose with her sleeve. I nodded. "Could be a new mineral deposit exposed by the recent earthquakes. Or—" I didn't finish the thought. What I really wanted to say was that it smelled like something's den, something's lair. We'd gone about 50 yards further when my light caught a reflection ahead. Something man-made. "Look," I said, pointing. On the ground was a helmet, a researcher's helmet with the light still on. Next to it lay a collection of scientific equipment, a seismometer, some sample containers, and a tablet computer, all arranged in a neat row that was definitely not the result of someone dropping them in panic. "That's Kevin's helmet," Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's one of my research assistants. He wasn't supposed to be down here today." I picked up the helmet. The light was still strong, battery nearly full. It hadn't been here long. "Kevin," I called out, my voice strangely flat in the sound-absorbing air. No answer came back. Without warning, our flashlights dimmed simultaneously. I clicked mine off and on, but instead of returning to its bright white beam, it only gave off a faint purple glow. "What's happening?" Sophia asked, trying the same with her light with the same result. "I don't know. Could be some kind of electromagnetic interference." I reached for my backup light, clicking it on. It too only produced the strange purple glow, barely enough to see a few feet ahead. "That's not normal interference," Sophia said. She pulled out a small device from her pack, some kind of scientific instrument, and turned it on. The screen lit up her face with an eerie blue glow. "What's that?" I asked. "Sound wave monitor. I was going to use it to record the acoustic properties of the new chamber, but..." She trailed off, staring at the screen, her face growing pale. I moved closer to look. The device was picking up regular pulses of sound we couldn't hear. Deep, powerful waves that registered as massive spikes on the monitor. "It's like a heartbeat," she whispered. "But it would have to be coming from something enormous." A cold weight settled in my stomach. Or from the cave itself. We both jumped. At a sudden scraping noise from somewhere up ahead. It sounded like claws on stone. Heavy, powerful strokes that left grooves behind. Cautiously we moved forward, our dim purple lights barely cutting through the darkness. On the wall to our right, fresh claw marks scored the flowstone. Deep. Gouges in solid limestone that would take tremendous strength to create. "No animal could do this," I said, running my fingers along one of the gouge marks. It was nearly an inch deep, the edges sharp enough to cut my skin if I pressed too hard. "Victor," Sophia said, her voice shaking slightly, "is it getting colder in here?" She was right. The temperature was dropping rapidly. Our breath now formed, clouds in the air. Despite us being in a section of cave known for its warmth due to geothermal activity below. I pulled out my detailed map of the cave system, shining my weak purple light on it. According to the map, we should be facing a solid wall right now, the end of the mapped section, but ahead of us stretched a new tunnel, dark and uninviting. "This isn't right," I said, looking from the map to the tunnel and back again. "This was solid rock last month when I did the inspection. There's no way an earthquake opened up something this perfect." The tunnel ahead was too smooth, too regular to be natural. It looked almost as if it had been dug, or as if something had eaten its way through the solid limestone. "We should go back," Sophia whispered, her eyes fixed on the dark opening. "Get a full team, more equipment." I nodded slowly. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to retreat, but as I turned to lead us back the way we'd come, a low rumble vibrated through the cave floor, stronger than before. The regular pulses had become more frequent, more insistent. "Do you hear that?" Sophia asked, cocking her head to one side. At first, I heard nothing but the strange, dead silence that had surrounded us since we entered this section. But then, faintly, I caught it. A rhythmic clicking sound coming from somewhere up ahead. In the new tunnel. Click, 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 pause, click, click, click. It sounded deliberate. It sounded like communication. "We need to leave," I said firmly, taking Sophia's arm and turning her back toward the entrance. Now we had taken only 3 steps when a powerful gust of cold air hit us from behind, as if the tunnel itself had exhaled. And with it came a whisper, so faint I couldn't be sure I'd actually heard it, that seemed to form words in a language I'd never heard but somehow understood. "Too late." We ran. There was no shame in it, no hesitation. Something was in that. Tunnel with us, something that shouldn't exist, and every cell in my body screamed at me to get away. Our dim purple lights barely showed the path ahead as we stumbled back the way we had come. The floor seemed to shift under our feet, as if the cave itself was trying to trip us. "Victor!" Sophia gasped, pointing behind us. I turned, and my blood turned to ice in my veins. A massive shadow detached itself from the darkness of the tunnel. It moved like nothing I'd ever seen before. Not quite walking, not quite crawling. It seemed to flow across the cave floor, walls and ceiling all at once. The shape was vaguely human-like but wrong. Too many limbs moving in ways that limbs shouldn't bend. "Don't look at it," I said, grabbing Sophia's hand. "Just run." But even as we fled, I could feel it watching us. Not just from behind, but somehow from all sides at once. My skin crawled with the sensation of countless eyes on me, though when I caught glimpses of the thing, I couldn't see any eyes at all. We rounded a corner, and I pulled Sophia into a narrow side passage, hoping to lose whatever was following us. For a moment we stood there in the dark, trying to quiet our breathing. My heart pounded so hard, I was sure it would give us away. "What was that thing?" Sophia whispered, her voice shaking. Before I could answer, a pale form flashed across. The opening of our hiding spot. Just a quick glimpse, but it was enough to burn the image into my mind. A creature with skin like dry bone, no eyes that I could see, and long, spindly limbs that ended in sharp points. Its body seemed covered in a hard shell, like an insect's exoskeleton. The Crawler. The name popped into my head from nowhere. That's what it was. A thing that crawled through the spaces between spaces, that lived in the darkness where no light had ever touched. A series of clicks echoed through the passage. That same rhythmic pattern we'd heard before. Click, click, click. Pause. Click, click, click. The sound bounced off the walls in a way that made it impossible to tell where it was coming from. "It's trying to confuse us," I whispered, "mess with our sense of direction." Sophia clutched my arm, her fingers digging in. "Victor, look at the wall." I turned my purple light toward where she was pointing. The stone wall beside us was moving. Not shaking or crumbling, but shifting like something soft. And as we watched, a long, pale limb pushed through what should have been solid rock, reaching for us. We bolted again, no longer caring about being quiet. The clicking followed us, growing louder, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "There!" I shouted, spotting the wider main passage ahead. "We need to get back to the tourist section. There are lights there, phones, other people." We burst into the main passage, but something was wrong. The path that should have led back to safety now curved in an unfamiliar direction. "This isn't right," I said, checking my map again. "It's like the cave has changed." "That's not possible," Sophia said, but her voice lacked conviction. A shadow fell across us, and we both looked up. The Crawler was on the ceiling, moving, with impossible speed, its body twisting in ways that made my eyes hurt to look at it. I reacted without thinking, grabbing one of my climbing pitons from my belt and hurling it at the creature. The metal spike hit the thing's shell with a dull clang and bent as if I'd thrown it against steel. "Run!" I shouted as the creature dropped from the ceiling, landing between us and the path back. We had no choice but to go deeper into the cave, away from the known routes and into the unexplored sections. The Crawler followed, moving sometimes on the floor, sometimes on the walls, sometimes skittering across the ceiling. It would disappear into cracks too small for it, only to emerge ahead of us from another impossible space. As we ran, I felt something hit my face, tiny dust-like particles floating in the air. They stuck to my skin, and immediately the walls around me seemed to waver and shift. The ceiling appeared to crack and collapse, huge boulders falling toward us. "Don't breathe it in," I shouted to Sophia, covering my mouth and nose with my shirt. "It's some kind of spore. It makes you hallucinate." But Sophia had already inhaled some of the particles. She screamed, batting at the air around her head as if fighting off invisible attackers. "They're not real!" I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "Sophia, it's not real. The cave isn't collapsing." Her eyes gradually focused on mine, and she nodded, though I could tell she was still seeing things that weren't there. We pushed on, trying to put distance between us and the crawler. At one point, I thought we might have lost it, but then that click, click, click sound would start up again, always closer than we expected. "My light," Sophia said suddenly. "The spotlight. Attachment." She fumbled with her gear, pulling out what looked like a small but powerful lamp. When she clicked it on, a beam of intense white light shot out, a blessed relief from our weak purple glows. The moment the bright beam hit the wall ahead of us, we heard it. A high-pitched keening sound, like metal scraping against metal. The noise was so painful I had to cover my ears. The light, I realized. It doesn't like the light. Sophia swung the beam around, searching for the source of the noise. For a brief second, the light caught the crawler clinging to a wall. The creature recoiled violently from the beam, making that terrible screeching sound again. "We need to find a way out of here," I said. "If we can keep it at bay with the light, maybe we can—" A rumble cut me off, and the floor shook beneath us. Rocks began to fall from the ceiling, not a hallucination this time, but a real cave-in, triggered by the creature's movements or sounds. "This way!" I shouted, pointing to a narrow passage that seemed stable. But as the dust cleared, I realized with horror that Sophia wasn't with me. The rockfall had separated us completely, a wall of debris between us. "Sophia!" I called, pressed against the rocks. "Can you hear me?" Her voice came back faintly through the stones. "I'm okay, but I can't get through to you." "Stay where you are," I told her. "Use your spotlight if it comes near. I'll find another way around to you." But even as I said it, I knew the cave was changing around us. Paths that should have connected were now twisted or blocked. It was as if the cave itself was working with the crawler, herding us like prey. I pressed on alone, my weak purple light barely showing the way. Every shadow seemed to hide the creature. Every sound made me freeze in terror. I could feel it hunting, me playing with me. At one point I thought I heard Sophia calling my name, but when I turned toward the sound, I saw only darkness. The crawler was learning, I realized. It was mimicking her voice. I checked my map again, desperate to find a way back to Sophia and then to the surface. But the paper in my hands might as well have been blank. Nothing matched anymore. The cave had become a labyrinth designed to trap us. I found myself in a large chamber I'd never seen before. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like teeth in a massive mouth. The floor sloped downward toward the center, where a pool of dark water reflected. My purple light, my radio crackled suddenly, making me jump. Through the static I heard Sophia's voice. "Victor, chamber, huge, can't way out." I grabbed the radio. "Sophia, where are you? Can you describe what you see?" Only static answered me. Then from behind me, I heard that now familiar click, click, click. I turned slowly, raising my light. The crawler stood at the entrance to the chamber. Up close, it was even more unnatural. Its body seemed to bend in impossible angles, joints moving backward and sideways. Its skin was pale as a cavefish, and where its face should have been was just smooth, blank space. It moved toward me, not rushing, almost curious. I backed away, my feet splashing into the edge of the pool. The cold water shocked me, but also gave me an idea. If this thing lived in the caves, evolved in the dry darkness, maybe water was its enemy. It was worth a try. I reached down, scooping up a handful of the cold cave water and flung it at the approaching creature. The water hit the crawler's chest, and it recoiled violently, that same high-pitched, keening sound filling the chamber. Where the droplets landed on its pale skin, steam rose as if the water was burning it. The creature backed away, its movements suddenly jerky and less coordinated. It disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel. But I knew it wasn't gone. It was regrouping, planning. I had found a weakness. But I was still lost, still separated from Sophia. And the cave was still changing around us, becoming a trap with no escape. And my light was growing dimmer by the minute. I stared at the dark tunnel where the crawler had disappeared, my mind racing. I needed a plan, not just to survive, but to find Sophia and get us both out of here. The water. The creature clearly hated the water. I looked around the chamber, noticing how the floor sloped toward the pool in the center. My years of exploring these caves had taught me to recognize patterns in how water flowed, how chambers formed. This pool had to connect to something deeper, and if I remembered correctly, there were flooded chambers below this section of the cave. Areas filled with naturally sulfuric water from underground hot springs. That gave me an idea. A desperate, dangerous idea. Sophia, I whispered into my radio, not expecting an answer but needing to try. If you can hear me, I'm going to try to trap this thing in the lower chambers. Find high ground. Get as far from the water as you can. Static crackled back at me, but then faintly, "Hear you, be careful." She was alive. That knowledge gave me strength. I checked my equipment. My climbing gear was still secure on my belt. Rope, carabiners, anchors. I had enough to set up a system that might work if I could just find the right spot. The clicking sounds started again, echoing from multiple directions. The crawler was circling, hunting. I needed to move. I followed the edge of the pool, looking for where the water drained out. There, a narrow crack at the base of the wall, water flowing steadily through it. Beyond the crack, I could just make out a steep chimney shaft leading upward, a vertical tunnel, maybe 2 feet wide, that disappeared into darkness above. That was it, my escape route. If I could get up that chimney shaft, I might find a way back to the mapped sections of the cave. But first, I had to deal with the crawler. I worked quickly, setting up anchor points around the chamber with my climbing gear. The plan was simple but risky. Use controlled collapses to redirect the water flow and flood the lower chamber where the creature seemed most comfortable. Just as I hammered in the last anchor, I heard Sophia's voice. Not over the radio, but echoing from a passage to my right. "Victor, I can see your light." She appeared at the entrance to a small tunnel, her spotlight beam cutting through the darkness. The relief of seeing her alive nearly made my knees buckle. "Stay there," I called. "Don't come any closer to the water." But as she took a step toward me, the clicking sound suddenly intensified. The crawler appeared on the ceiling above her, moving with that impossible speed. "Behind you!" I shouted. Sophia swung her spotlight up, catching the creature in its beam. The crawler screeched, but didn't retreat this time. It was learning, adapting. With a movement almost too fast to see, one of its long limbs lashed out, knocking the spotlight from Sophia's hand. The light shattered against the stone floor, plunging us back into the dim purple glow of our failing flashlights. "Run!" I yelled, waving her toward the chimney shaft. "Over here!" As Sophia ran toward me, I saw the creature drop from the ceiling, pursuing her. I grabbed a rock and hurled it at the crawler, trying to distract it. "Get to the chimney!" I shouted, pointing to the narrow vertical shaft. "Start climbing! I'll be right behind you." Sophia reached the shaft and began pulling herself up. She was good, clearly experienced with technical climbing, but the crawler was closing in fast. I stood my ground between the creature and the chimney, my last piton gripped in my hand like a weapon. "Come on," I whispered. "Come get me." The crawler approached more cautiously this time, those clicking sounds coming faster, more agitated. It seemed to consider me, its blank face somehow conveying calculation. "That's right," I said, backing up slowly toward the chimney shaft. "Follow me." I reached the edge of the pool, the water lapping at my boots. The crawler stopped, clearly, reluctant to approach the water. That's when I noticed something, a faint smell of sulfur coming from the pool. This water wasn't just regular cave water. It connected to the sulfur springs below. Perfect. I waded in up to my ankles, never taking my eyes off the creature. "What's wrong?" I taunted. "Afraid of a little water?" The crawler shifted, moving to circle around the pool. It was trying to cut me off from the chimney where Sophia was climbing. I couldn't let that happen. With one swift motion, I pulled the release on the anchors I'd set up. The effect was immediate. A controlled rockfall crashed down, changing the slope of the floor. Water from the pool began rushing toward the lower chamber where the crawler had first appeared, but I'd miscalculated. The creature moved with blinding speed, lunging not at me, but at the chimney shaft. One of its limbs slashed out, catching my leg as I tried to jump away. Pain seared through my calf as the crawler's claw tore through my pants and into flesh. I fell, my leg giving way beneath me. "Victor!" Sophia cried from partway up the chimney. "Keep climbing!" I shouted back, dragging myself toward the shaft. Blood soaked my pant leg, but I couldn't worry about that now. The water was flowing faster. As more rocks fell, the cave itself seeming to groan around us. The crawler made that high-pitched keening sound again as water began to pool around its lower limbs. I reached the chimney shaft and pulled myself up, ignoring the burning pain in my leg. The coppery smell of my own blood mixed with the sulfur, scent now filling the chamber. "Victor, your leg," Sophia said, looking down at me from about 15 feet up the shaft. "Just keep going," I grunted, forcing myself to climb despite the pain. "We need to get higher." The chimney was tight but manageable, a straight shot upward that would have been an easy climb if not for my injured leg. Each time I had to put weight on it, stars exploded behind my eyes. Below us, the chamber was transforming. Water gushed in from passages I couldn't see, filling the lower section. The crawler darted back and forth, its movements becoming frantic as the water level rose. Then I realized we were in a massive chamber now, much larger than I'd first thought. The weak light had hidden its true size from us. And all around, ancient formations created a natural maze of stone columns and platforms. "We need to get to that ledge," I called to Sophia, pointing to a shelf of rock about 30 feet up. She nodded and continued climbing. I followed more slowly, my injured leg threatening to give out with each move upward. The water below was rising faster now, bubbling and steaming where it touched the crawler. The creature's screeches echoed off the walls, growing more desperate. We reached the ledge and collapsed onto it, gasping for breath. From this vantage point, we could see the entire chamber below. The crawler was trapped in the maze of stone formations, darting from one high point to another as the water level climbed. "It's working," Sophia whispered, but the crawler wasn't done. It began scaling the walls, heading toward our position. Despite the water, despite its obvious pain, it was still hunting us. "We need to seal it in," I said, looking at the rock formations around us. One large column looked unstable, cracked at its base where water had eroded it over centuries. I pulled out my last anchor and handed it to Sophia. "When I tell you, hammer this into that crack there." I pointed to a fissure in the rock wall. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Something stupid," I admitted, gathering my strength. Then I leapt across to a nearby formation, ignoring the searing pain in my leg. The crawler saw me move and changed direction, heading straight for me. That's what I wanted, to draw it away from Sophia, to position it directly under the unstable column. "Now, Sophia!" I shouted. She drove the anchor into the crack with a rock. The effect was immediate. A shudder ran through the entire formation. Rocks began to fall, then larger chunks of ceiling. I jumped back toward the ledge, but my injured leg couldn't provide enough push. I fell short, catching the edge with just my hands. "Victor!" Sophia cried, grabbing my wrists. Below me, the crawler had reached the base of our ledge. It looked up at me, that blank face somehow radiating hatred. One long limb reached up, claws extended toward my dangling legs. with a strength born of desperation. Sophia pulled while I kicked at the wall with my good leg, scrambling onto the ledge just as the column came crashing down. The crawler screeched one final time as tons of rock collapsed onto it, driving it down into the rising sulfuric water. The sound it made as the acidic water touched its exoskeleton was like nothing I'd ever heard before. A high, piercing shriek that seemed to go on, echoing through the cave long after the creature itself had disappeared beneath the bubbling surface, then silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of water and our ragged breathing. "Is it dead?" Sophia whispered. I looked down at the pool of sulfuric water, now filling nearly half the chamber. The surface bubbled and steamed where the crawler had gone under. "I think so," I said, though something told me that a creature that had survived in these caves for who knows how long wouldn't be killed so easily. But it was trapped, at least for now. Sophia examined my leg. The gash was deep, the skin around it already discolored from the crawler's claws. "We need to get you to a doctor," she said, tying a bandage from her pack around the wound. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. "There should be a connecting passage up there," I said, pointing to the top of the chimney shaft. "It might lead back to mapped territory. It took us hours to find our way out, me hobbling on my injured leg, Sophia supporting me when I needed it." Her own exposed skin showed strange patterns of discoloration where the spores had touched her, like blue-black bruises that shifted and moved when you weren't looking directly at them. When we finally reached the surface, dawn was breaking over. The desert landscape. The park authorities listened to our story with obvious disbelief, but the physical evidence was hard to ignore. My leg wound, Sophia's skin discoloration, our missing colleague Kevin, whose body was never found. And they sealed the entrance to the North Passage, pouring concrete into the tunnel that led to that strange, massive chamber. They posted a guard at night, more to reassure the public than anything else. But sometimes, when I can't sleep at night, I think about what the guard told me last week when I visited the park, about the clicking sounds he sometimes hears coming from behind the concrete barrier, about how the monitoring equipment occasionally registers subtle pressure changes, as if something is pressing against the other side, testing for weakness. And I wonder if all we really did was trap ourselves in here with it. If the crawler is still there, waiting in the darkness, growing stronger, learning, adapting, waiting for the day when the seal breaks and the shadows below are free to crawl into our world.